Someone once said to me that time is a flat circle and we are going to endlessly live our existence in a permanent loop over and over and over again for infinity. And so the Horsemen have been assembled once again to criticize a company called Riot Games, which may come as a shock to you all. This is regarding the story around Sean Gares and DDK, a beloved and very highly competent casting duo that was seemingly pushed into early retirement by their antics of the game's developer that controls the VALORANT space. We're going to be discussing that. I wrote a very popular op-ed about it. So the Horsemen have been assembled. Of course, MonteCristo, Duncan, Thorin Shields, the esports historian, and joining us, another highly competent commentator that has existed in both worlds, the madness of Activision Blizzard and Riot Games simultaneously. I don't know how he does it. It is, of course...
Free SL. He got the trifecta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Uber joining us. Thanks so much for being the guest. And obviously, thanks so much for the Horsemen convening today.
Yeah, I mean, good to be here. Yeah, it's a weird position for me to be in because I have like a fairly limited first-hand experience with dealing with Riot Games, and then a huge amount of anecdotal evidence. I'm like a fucking street urchin sidles up to you, who's like, grease me palms with some fucking, with some dosh, and I'll drop the scoop. But I mean, like I said, I almost did a Riot event earlier this year, and I went through the ESL, sat in an office with D-Man and Pansy and Joe and all that. So. I turned the EULCS down to do Overwatch League. So I dealt a little bit with them as well. So I'm sort of comparing my limited personal evidence with a lot of information coming. I feel like I put fucking Cerebro on my head the last sort of few months. So it's been a trip, man. It's been quite a journey.
Even that angle, though, the reason I actually reference you worked for ESL is as a tournament organizer. Remember in CSGO, like Valve doesn't really do anything; they just sort of sit back and let everyone else, like, just let battle commence, basically. So in our game, the joke is ESL essentially, actually on a smaller scale, has done all the same things we're probably going to discuss with Activision Blizzard and Riot. Like famously, I've known some of the top people at ESL. They might phrase it differently than how I might, but they are in the same boat. They don't want duos that have more power than them. They want to be the kingmaker. They want to keep rates down. If they have their own people, like in your case, you actually actively worked for them and were part of their company, they're going to work their people in or sometimes hire only a certain amount of outside people. It won't just be all the big names from outside. So I think actually a lot of the same storylines that I saw crop up in CSGO seem to have played out in all the other games because the premise is just a similar mentality, I feel like, from the company side as to what the vision of the company is. And the reason I seeded the conversation with this will actually, I think, be very alien to fans. They'd probably be shocked to find things like that. They wouldn't want like the biggest casting duo to be in their game and specifically work for them. That might seem counterintuitive to a fan, but I think actually, as you'll find in this particular discussion, it is an incredibly murky world of how people get hired. Should they be hired? Like what the reasons are, why they're not hired later. And it is very rarely whatever on the outside would seem like the simple read, like, oh, maybe they didn't think he was good enough, or, oh, wow, does he not like Valorant? Like it's almost never those sort of very simplistic reasons. So I think we can go anywhere with this topic. So maybe yourself the facts of the matter or something.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll do that. So yeah, basically, for those that maybe don't follow Valorant, Sean Gares had moved over from CS, had a pretty good tenure there as an IGL. He'd been an analyst. I was one of the guys that brought him through as an analyst. Obviously, he worked D-League with us, where he would leverage his in-game expertise to talk on the desk about the game. Then he moved across into commentary. When Valorant started, Sean Gares was absolutely adamant he wanted to be a commentator now. Yes. So he had to pivot to a completely different role. And I said to him at that time, it's a different world. Being a color commentator isn't the same as an analyst. With an analyst, you get time, you get space to breathe, make your point. Unless, of course, you're doing a desk with Duncan. And just get that in there, swish. When you're a color commentator, you have this tiny little fucking window to get in something you've noticed. And in a game like Valorant or indeed like Overwatch, it can be hard to get those little nuggets of knowledge in the time frame. It's a huge skill. And he ended up pairing with another commentator, known for more of his hype and play-by-play in the form of DDK, former Quake guy who moved into CS when he was working at Faceit, was one of the halves of a beloved duo that represented all the Faceit events, worked many majors, including the last one, which was kind of his swan
He
song. like so
casted
many
the
of us.
infamous Cold Zero jumping on no scope. If anyone's ever seen that
Exactly.
clip, which is a very famous clip, yeah, that was DDK casting that.
So him and Sean, obviously knowing each other from that world, said, let's make the ultimate duo. And I know firsthand from talking to them that they put a lot of work in. Unlike a lot of people who moved from Counter-Strike that moved into Valorant, they were very respectful of the game. They made sure they knew all the, ability names and used them religiously. And on top of that, they really used to do lots of work together, so they synergized. And they snowballed up to being considered the best duo in North America in the minds of many.
And they were. I mean, I think that. I think
by
that
a long shot.
They were really
Not
good.
even fucking close. Yeah.
So, like, before we get
the content side even suggests how committed these guys were. If you don't know, at the time that they began in Valorant, they were actually working me and Monty's event Flashpoint. But because they were people who didn't feel comfortable with the setup, because obviously it's when we'd just gone online and no one had ever been faced with the choice of like, do you want to come into the studio? Do you stay at home? Because it was actually, believe it or not, right during the whole 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which spoiler, it's 2 years later now, but we all know the story with that. So when that happened, right, basically, because they weren't going to come in to do the CSGO event, they just began, because they'd already been playing like the beta or whatever, they just began doing Valorant stuff. And if people go and check the timestamp, the first episode of that podcast they did is in like April 2020.
Yes.
Like, spoiler, I don't think the game's even officially out then. So these guys from day one were putting in the effort to be like the top experts. As Richard says, they were clearly trying to market themselves as like, please don't just put us in our roles role. Like Sean Gares was like a desk analyst in CSGO. It was like, we want to be a casting partner and we want to be a duo. And they even said, I saw Sean Gares when he said he was leaving this job, that he said that's why they started so early, so that they could know everything about the game and know that they're on the same page and that they weren't people just sort of like tourists just moving into a game. It's like they did commit fully to this game, even though, by the way, if you go and look at half the talent and get hired now, they rocked up sometime last year when the Masters were all going and people saw there's LAN events and it's getting all, and people are seeing the Boaster clips and stuff like. There's a lot of people came. Listen, it's fine. Came late to the party. These guys were there on day one, as far as I can tell.
Not only that, but a lot of the people,
and they all had offers as well in CS:GO. By the way, they turned down to keep doing Valorant.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, also, I mean, a lot of the people in Europe in particular, but even some in NA, like half their, some of these people were like half in Overwatch League, like Sideshow and Brand, or some of them were half in Rainbow Six, like Veli and Jess Goat, right? And so, these people, it's not like Sean and DDK were like all in now, except DDK did do the major, so he took one event off.
That was out of nowhere though. He hadn't like been planning for that for 6 months or anything, guys. The reason it was actually a minor scandal in CS:GO is I think he was surprised to get that offer seemingly out of nowhere right at the end of the year. Yeah.
And so, and I think everyone was surprised to see them inserted as well. That like, even with the fucking Bardolph dummy spear that happened at that event, people were kind of surprised to see them just, inserted again.
But here's the thing: is like also that was after DDK had been snubbed for an international Valorant event too. Yes. So it's not like it was being reciprocated by Riot, because famously, like, Sean was invited to an event that DDK was not. And like, just to be clear about where this episode is going, this isn't. There's a lot to unpack here about how Riot treats casters generally, which I am a firsthand expert on. There's also a lot to unpack about the broader state of the industry beyond just Riot and what the career futures of your favorite casters are, because it's not looking good, guys. It's looking pretty shit right now, and a lot of the monopoly power that especially the developers have, but also certainly Twitch as well, contributes to casters being faced with some really hard decisions. And I think that's why we saw the eventual result of this, and Richard will explain the rest of the timeline, is that Sean and DDK are now working at 100 Thieves to like coach and manage their Valorant roster, which apparently is it's sad that that's a better option. And then I'll make some comparisons later on to traditional sports. And
by orders of magnitude better, yeah.
As you've also pointed out, Monty, on many shows in League of Legends, that is also, by the way, what if we don't fix this problem with the talent and understanding the landscape, that is the new pipeline. The pipeline is when you get too good at being broadcast talent, you have to stop being broadcast talent and get a real job in the industry. That's unfortunately, they've essentially created a scenario where it's almost some sort of fucked up gig economy, and you can only ever do it when you're trapped between like just above like homeless and like haven't quite made it yet, and they just want to keep everyone in that. And once you get too good, you go up the top and you have to go elsewhere because it ain't good enough for you. And if you can't make it up, you're fucked. You're just in the. So it's like they want turnover almost, or it'll be inevitable at least.
So anyway, let's continue with the facts of this. So there is a long timeline here, and as it was alluded to previously, Sean and DDK, I mean, I know from talking to these guys and my experience with them, my experience of having DDK on Pop Flash, an event that was a Valorant event that was produced by Flashpoint, Flashpoint's parent company technically, right? But I've produced Valorant events, and I asked Sean to come on, and he was busy with other things, so couldn't do it, but DDK came on. These guys were all in, and Sean was busy because he was creating Valorant content basically and co-streaming and was prioritizing that at the time, which is his choice. We gave him co-streaming privileges to the event, and so they were truly like all in on this from day one. And for those who don't remember, the release of Valorant, the kind of like beta, the big huge promotional event that they had when the game was released occurred in like right as the pandemic started. So right as the lockdown started, it was in April of 2020.
With no other releases proximate to it either in the same genre, to be fair.
Yeah. So, a lot of people were committing at that time, but, it was pretty obvious, I think, that given Riot's direction with competitive games, Riot really loves hardcore competitive games. At least that's what they claim to love. And so, yeah, I know, Thorin. Just don't go there.
To be fair, they do, because they really love Daughter, and then they took it and did whatever they did with it. So they actually are, and they took CS:GO and did it. So it's true, they do love it.
Get your notes in.
All I would say is this: if that's how they treat people they love, bloody hell, I'd hate to see people they hate. Fucking hell.
Well, that's me. So, and you.
Now back to Monty.
But here's it. I will just say, at a time in which I never, in any context, intimated I had any interest in Valorant, I had it back channeled to me. Don't even think about ever appearing on one of our broadcasts, which is like, I don't even care about the game. What? Like, this is mad. Like, that's how far gone you guys are. Like, you just assume like, oh, everyone wants to fuck us. Like, listen, I want to fuck you in a different way, but not be on your broadcast. That's for sure.
So basically, what these guys were in from the very beginning. For those of you who don't know, Sean is, a very famous former professional CS player. DDK was a former Quake player and Quake caster who then moved into Counter-Strike. These guys have insane pedigree, and in my mind were the best casting duo that I heard in Valorant, because they both, DDK is a good play-by-play caster, but they both have like this analytic mindset, and they were able to bounce off each other really well and break things down. You could hear, especially Sean is he's like analyst Semler, where like you hear him and you can like hear the joy of casting the game that he really like brings to the table, and he gets really authentically excited and was obviously really loving it. And over the course of Valorant, they didn't really get a chance to work that much together. Now, some of that was because it
was like a feature, not a bug, right?
Well, in my case, I tried to get them both to cast my tournament, and Sean said no. So they did have more options than they presented. I will say that. Like, that was a choice that they made.
Exactly, Sean Gares. You might still be in the game now if you hadn't turned Monty down for that one thing a few years ago, you fucking rat. There you go. You read
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that their sob story might be a little less sob.
All right,
slightly. I'm still on their side.
Yeah, and there's also the LCQ that they would have been able to do, but then when it got rescheduled, they had pre-existing arrangements, and Riot obviously like had to turn that around really quickly. But even at that LCQ, the original one, they were trying to mix me in with the two of them. They weren't even going to fucking let them cast together at that event. They were trying to play games with me. So, and then outside of that, they're fucking out there doing seeding matches in like random VCT stuff. Like, I get it. May as well pay your dues like the other casters that are, doing that work. But then when it comes to international event time, see ya.
By the way, most of the things that DDK and Sean Gares at least implied were the things that put them off, like the idea of uncertainty. You don't know if you'll be hired, or it was even, I thought, listen, he was very subtle about this, because Sean Gares isn't a very provocative person unless you catch him in like the 2 hours he's really pissed off before he again chills out and becomes normal again, right? The problem was he even sort of intimated like maybe having to skip an event, by the way, for a totally reasonable reason. Like I think his child was being born or something. That might have even like put him in Riot's bad graces. Spoiler, stuff like that does, even though it's totally unreasonable, of course, because unfortunately the implication is sort of like, what do you mean? this should be your dream to work our video games. You do get that sort of fucking vibe, unfortunately. People don't know the infamous Mark Merrill tweet, one of the developers of League of Legends. He basically thanked I Will Dominate, someone who, by the way, in the following years has almost carried like League of Legends on his back by doing core streams outside of Riot's format. He basically told that guy sort of like, you're welcome for getting to have a career in a free game I made, which is like, what? But if you understand that tweet, you understand the mentality of where some of these people are starting at, and you're not really even reaching to the middle. You have to reach over to where they're at and sort of negotiate with them there. And if you don't get that's their position, you think it's just a wide open game, you're going to run into a lot of these problems. Because I've heard, by the way, specific to Valorant, it's the game I've heard the most talent tell me exactly that, which is like, even if I just did the last 2 of the big events, I can never actually be certain I'm getting the 3rd one, for example. Or if I get the gig, I don't know that the guy next to me's hired. Like maybe this caster I work with, or maybe like we're talking about in this case, maybe I'm trying to make a duo, but actually I keep getting the feeling like if they hire him, they're not going to hire me. If they hire him, it's not, they almost feel like, even the ones who haven't quite consciously figured this out, it feels like this is starting to permeate the talent.
The best they'll do for you
agree?
Is guarantee you 1 out of like 4 international events in a year. That's it. They cannot do any more for you. Doesn't matter who the fuck you are, whether it's Dan or Sean or Lauren or what. That might be a different case because I think Euro operates a little bit differently, but they just can't. They had this model, right, where this was covered pretty extensively, I think, when a lot of the Riot casters full time were sort of fired, right, and brought back on as freelancers. And I had this sold to me by a pretty prominent sort of person at Riot when I was first talking to them about Valorant. They're like, oh, it's great, we guarantee you like a minimum number of days, and there's this day rate, stipulated. There's some flexibility, and it's always going to be more than that minimum, but it just gives you an idea, a structure. You know what I mean? As if that you going and doing another game wouldn't just fucking put a gigantic black mark on you anyway, because you cannot beholden to them at that point.
Literally fucking J. Jonah Jameson, you from the first Spider-Man movie. Everyone remembers the old school one where Sam Raimi. Remember, he goes in there and he wants a job as a photographer at the fucking that newspaper, right? And if you remember, J. Jonah Jameson's like, "Nah, freelance. It's the best thing for you, kid. Get out there, get me this shot." And the idea is, the joke is, he's only going to pay you if you get him exactly what he wants that one time. No, do that. They sold you the same thing. It's fucking J. Jonah Jameson.
And at the time, I'm like, oh, that sounds fine, because I know full well that like I was part of this mad fucking incubation project at ESL where they would actually pay us full-time salaries to sit in a fucking office for most of the week and fucking throw paper planes and just piss Joe off. Or, we had fucking Todd in that same room and he'd just lose his mind because we were always screeching like bonobos. I'd do like a Battlefield cast. I'd do like ESL Pro League cast, two games a week, and they're paying me fuck all. Like I'm not living in the fucking lap of luxury, but they're paying me a full-time salary for that. Obviously, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And after I left, they cut all their casters and then they brought them back on as freelancers as well. So this is the way of things. And they didn't have enough to justify keeping that roster of casters on. But I think Riot's one was pretty similar, and there was a lot of friction in doing that. Like, I know a lot of casters internally were like, what the fuck, man? Being fired and obviously not having access to a lot of benefits you would have, especially if you fucking live in Germany, for example, right? And you're from the UK. Like, I don't know, all their fucking casters, then what? Well, get a visa. All right, well, because eventually, Brexit is going to complicate that quite drastically. And I know it's a problem for Valorant casters as well, because they fucking need people to sponsor their visas and whatnot. So that's the direction they sort of went in. But the idea of like how they sort of sold it to you never really quite made sense. The framing is everything with this kind of stuff. And it was obviously the beginning, or not the beginning, but another milestone on their way to limit their costs from talent as much as possible. And now, like, you will get some pretty exorbitant like rates for some casters in some other games, but there is like a peg that Riot have put. It's not very high above like a standard rate, and even their fucking best casters in LCS cannot get above it, no matter what. Whether they're trying to negotiate a rate to account for inflation, a nominal rate, forget about it. You're just not going to fucking get it. They are so dedicated, so doggedly defending this arbitrary marker in sort of rate that is not, I mean, it's okay, but for top 10 and talent, it's utter dog shit, and they will not deviate from that. And they will resort to rate fixing with external operators to make sure their casters don't get offered more than that on other things.
Oh, right. So for the rest of the industry, they sort of standardize so that you can't essentially get paid less.
I have heard of
right.
I have heard of at least one scenario where they have said they don't want external companies for third-party stuff offering their casters too much. One example of that.
This is true. I've also.
This is Monty's wheelhouse. This is exactly what the reason why, spoiler, he was in Overwatch in a way.
And just to be clear, like, I don't come here like some Overwatch caster just to shit on Riot. We're not talking about Riot today. I've got a lot of problems with the Overwatch League. We'll do an episode. I'll come back and talk about that. Like, I'm not a Blizzard employee. I'm on a 2-year contract with the Overwatch League, so we'll be doing that this year. But again, I'm in a position where I dealt a lot with Valorant. But mostly their casters are just coming to me and be like, what the fuck do I do? Because I was one of the few people that were like, hey, this is bullshit. With the Nerd Street Gamer stuff where the guy literally still works VCT, by the way. They fucking got a guy to manage talent, but also was on the broadcast himself. And you better believe he sorted himself out real good. You know what I mean? So that was what got this all started.
Seen that plenty of times down the years as well.
Fuck me. Still chilling, isn't he? And that's where the floodgates open. So that's where a lot of this comes from. So just to be clear, I'm not here just to, that's a competitor. I better fucking undermine them because Blizzard do the same shit. They're all fucked, mate.
Yeah, and it's partially we'll get into the kind of the mechanics of the dev monopolies and how this works. But at least at the beginning, I will say what was compelling about Valorant was obviously the huge release. I mean, the massive numbers that they generated on the game's release and all of the top tier streamers in the world going over there playing the games, having millions and millions of concurrent viewers across the title on Twitch. And so it looked very promising. And because people know that Riot spends a lot of money to support their esports scene and to develop things globally. So a lot of casters wanted to make the move over into Valorant, make that transition, especially after like it basically killed NA CSGO as like all the NA players ended up going over to Valorant and joining that game. Some of them came back later on, but it seemed like if you were, there was really like a bloodbath among casters in order to go over to that game. Now, of course, the problem is from a tournament operations perspective, I think Riot, what they had hoped for, potentially, like who knows what I think they were kind of testing and seeing, do we want this to be like Counter-Strike where we have a bunch of independent tournament operators that we give the blessing to on a circuit, or do we want this to be more like League of Legends where we have a franchise league? Now, a lot of the problems came in later because most of the events, barring like the big international tournaments, so, the regional events, a lot of the viewership, like 70% of it comes on co-streams, which if you're an independent tournament operator is very, very hard to justify running because it becomes really difficult to sell sponsors on that when you can't guarantee that the message from the sponsors will actually be heard because the majority of the viewership is coming off of the co-streams, right? And also, Riot had other goals in the beginning, too, including bringing people like Sean and DDK in because they want Counter-Strike fans to come check out Valorant, right? And they were incentivizing casters. At the very beginning, in fact, Valorant casters were getting paid far more in terms of their day rates than many top League
They
of
offered me a
Legends
very
casters.
good rate for LCQ. Yeah.
Yes.
It was
Obviously, also does make a cynically more sense early on to do that, to encourage people to come over and to want to try and test the game and to, believe it's an upgrade and all that jazz. If you haven't noticed, a very common trend with all these game devs is, especially if they weren't in the cycle of games, the one with the last game, like obviously Blizzard was sort of StarCraft and then all the games between, then Overwatch. So when you weren't the guy who just fucked everyone, you always present it like they did to Monty, like, come over, it's nice and warm over here. We don't have any of those mean people like Riot Games. Come on, everything brilliant over here. Much greener grass here. That's the whole fucking sell. But obviously, once you're 1 month in, you're like, wait a minute, it's the same shit as last time. What the fuck? And then they just slam that fucking prison door shut.
They fucking don't like it. They don't like being told how to do things either. Like, I remember this at the Overwatch League. Like, Monty and Del were literally actually brought on as casters and also consultants, and they didn't fucking want a bar of the consulting. So I mean, they were fine. They took, I'm sure they took a consulting, rate for this, but they actively did not want to fucking know about it. You know what I mean? It's like, I think, and this has got to be like the 4th time we've had to teach people the same, I'd say Valorant's the 5th. We're teaching people the same fucking lessons. We have to teach them every single time they try and spin something like this up, for whether it's caster rates, how to make compelling content, how to structure a show.
But the thing about Overwatch League that's different than the Sean and DDK case is like they're trying to break into this game, right? But the difference is Riot isn't offering them, they didn't negotiate up front to come into the game. I did that, Doe and I did that with Overwatch League where we were signed to the league like a year and a half before the league fucking started, guys. Like we had a multi-year guaranteed contract. And so the risk was mitigated and we knew, okay, we're going to get this amount of money in order for moving over. It wasn't like, I'm going to make some content and then hope to be brought on the broadcast, and then maybe I'll get a long-term deal somewhere down the road. Because Riot just isn't offering anybody long-term deals because, I mean, from a business perspective, they don't have to.
Why would you? Yeah.
They don't have to.
They're the only game in town.
Yeah, they're the only game in town because as like what I said, Riot basically is operating all of the major international tournaments. They're not farming those out to other tournament organizers, which means that the events that other tournament organizers can run are just qualifiers for those events, which is not very attractive, spoiler, to many tournament organizers. There's a reason why, guys, you don't see any Blast events anymore. We did one event. You don't see any ESL Valorant events, do you? Like, they're not there because it's not Esports Engine. Where are they?
The RFP is like really asymmetrical. And the only reason Nerd Street does their shit is because Nerd Street's business model doesn't put them in a position of relying on being able to sell sponsors from these events or also any sort of assistance from Riot, right? Nerd Street don't give a fuck because all they're trying to do is drive people to their platform, sell them their ads. So they can do this.
Because they're owned by Comcast, guys, because Nerd Street is fucking owned by Comcast, so they don't care about losing money.
Do you think Adam Apicella is like lining up to try and run Valorant events? Fuck no, because he looks at the fucking RFP and wipes his ass with it. There's just nothing there.
Yep. So and just on that point, I mean, like this has happened with multiple games where when the developer says, hey, we're open to pitches from third-party operators to run our tournaments. It sounds good on paper and people like do that initial inquiry, and then comes this like outrageous list of demands. And so over in Valorant, what Mitch is talking about, you've got certain types of production you absolutely have to do. All your graphics and stuff have to be pre-approved by Riot anyway, so it fits like the fucking theme that they want for the game and it's represented the way it is. There's the rate fixing, i.e. it's your budget in your tournament, but you cannot pay someone above a certain amount because that will fuck up the industry somehow. Of course it doesn't. It's your money, but Riot don't want to have to deal with it down the road. On and on it goes. Riot production people in a fucking production truck watching your production people produce their show. Like, it's just fucking weird. And so obviously all the big tournament operators that know how to run a show, can put on a good show, might want to do something cool and interesting. They're not allowed to. I mean, it was the same with Activision Blizzard. They actively stopped tournament operators from having. It was an agreement in the original third-party contracts that went out, where it was like, if you have like any cool statistic packages or anything on the server that can get you like better statistics than what they will have in the official Overwatch League, you can't run them. Yeah. You cannot make their
product API access for this shit. They just blocked it.
You cannot make their product look inferior by running a better event. Now think about how League of Legends back in the day. Think about all the legendary events, IPL and all that stuff. Think about CS:GO. How MLG come in and we had all this. What you're doing is you're stunting overall broadcast quality just so you can control the whole ecosystem. And you
could even argue, by the way, the case you give like of MLG. Companies like, think of this order: MLG, E-League, Blast. Like, actually, these outside companies coming in is what makes the industry have to level its standards up, because that's how they get in the game, by bringing something someone else doesn't have. And that's what makes the main people, who in this case would be Riot, they'd have to level theirs up. But if they don't ever let them in, then what is the impetus to upgrade your platform? That's the problem I have with
innovation without competition.
Yeah, exactly. My problem with this whole philosophy of essentially min-maxing, like trying to get the best talent but for as little as possible and not like give them too much control, is you can win in the short term, but in the long term you also are sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like, it will be your product as well that won't be elevated and become the thing that, like, think about that in some of the other games, like in League of Legends, for example, they get a lot of credit for the things they leveled up with their production. Spoiler, some of that came from having OGN. Like, you always need that competition to drive it forward. Sure, in perfect world, maybe you could trust people to motivate themselves, but I mean, those people are just very rare.
People like treading water in this industry a lot, especially if they're in the corporate structure. Yes. They want a fucking template. They want to rinse and repeat. They don't want to think about adding shit on because it stresses them out. Fuck, man, we had that problem with the Overwatch League. Man, like trying to improve the broadcast. Like we'd have a lot of ideas, a lot of suggestions, and there just wasn't the bandwidth, there wasn't the headcount, there wasn't this, that, the other. Just couldn't do it. They wanted to just keep fucking running the hamster wheel, and that's why like season 1 was like very much of the same, and in season 2 we did this fucking Disney XD bullshit, and we just got stuck in this rut of formula that we couldn't really break out of because at some point we just fucking didn't have the people to do it.
Well, there wasn't the motivation from many of the producers, the lead producers, to do it either, because ultimately
my missus will fucking have you, mate.
No, you know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Many of these people are no longer. But no, I think a lot of it was that there wasn't motivation at the end of the day because they didn't care enough to like spend the extra time in order to fix these issues. Like, there's no excuse for not having player reaction cams in Overwatch League for 2 years. Like, that's ridiculous. And many other minor tournament organizers got that down.
It took PG 2 weeks at the major, so exactly 2 years. Make them look good.
Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in like the production stuff when we're talking about casters. But when it comes to casters, at least when we have multiple tournament organizers, right? There tends to be better rates. Like Counter-Strike casters tend to get better rates when there's multiple people in the ecosystem. Casters tend to get long-term deals, at least in Counter-Strike. Like, you're going to get a blast deal, and so you have a certain minimum income. Like with Flashpoint, we would offer people like year-long deals to come into Flashpoint, right? Because that security and those casters become part of your brand as a tournament organizer, and it becomes very, very important to you. So good deals have, in fact, been offered. In the League of Legends space, here's a great example of how caster rates work. So, when IEM was running League of Legends events, Riot gave the casters 2 ESL for free. Free, guys. Like, that was part of their salary
the Riot
with
casters
Riot.
specifically. Yes.
If you were a Riot employee, Riot would literally loan these casters out to go do IEM events and not pay them any additional money and not charge ESL. I was still hired for these events despite the fact that they had to fly me from Korea and pay me money. So that's the power of having, an actual independent company, and that's the value that these companies think that people add, is that they were willing to pay me to come to these events and give me contracts even though I was not literally fucking free. Okay? So there is a lot of power to having competing broadcasters within a space. And we see this, for example, look at let's take an example, the NFL. Commentators get paid $10 million, $8 million a year to do like one game a week for a 17-game season because they're on prime time, right? Now, to put that in context of players, that's like a mid-range player in terms of NFL salary. I promise you, in League of Legends, none of the LCS casters make anywhere close to a mid-range LCS player. They're not making that much
didn't
money.
They say LCS minimum salary is about like 100K nowadays? So yeah,
it's not minimum, but that's not technically the minimum by the league, but it's probably like what people are actually getting paid. Meanwhile, top LCS players are making probably $1 million a year. I'd say optimistically as a caster, you're probably making 200K.
Yes.
Optimistically.
By the way,
that's if you do all the international events as well, so not just LCS. Because an LCS player could just play LCS, never go to an international event, and make $500K a year.
And don't forget how they WWE your ass and make it so, like, can't go on your own streams, can't create your own content, stuff like
They're
this.
better about that now, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, but back in the day, like, this was another
just
thing.
A few years ago, yeah,
and when I say back in the day, I don't mean like 2010 or whatever the fuck. I'm talking about, again, this is like the Riot Games mindset, because they don't believe in a rising tide raises all ships. It's far fucking from it. What their philosophy is, their core philosophy is, you're lucky to do their events, and their events make you. You don't make their event, even if you have all the iconic calls, even if you're the best caster, even if you could make sick content. No, they make you. And so they were so nervous about that, you couldn't even create additional content on the side. You couldn't have a Twitch stream. You couldn't do YouTube content.
You just couldn't monetize it, to be fair. So
yeah, exactly. So what would be the fucking point? I mean, you could do that, but you couldn't have a sponsor attached to it.
When they signed Crepo to the broadcast, one of the things they made him do was demonetize his stream, which had a bunch of...
Oh, that's gross as well. If you know he was one of the Season 2 pros, which means his stream would have had like tons of subs. Mm-hmm. I bet he was making tens of thousands off that.
Yeah. So to discuss this against the other model, because a lot of the problems is that the developers do have monopolies where they're actually just conspiring to control the rates of their casters, and they're playing games in order to minimize the casters' abilities to be famous, such as breaking up duos. Like the LCS has never had consistent duos. As Mitch was saying earlier, They were trying to play games with him to have him cast with DDK and Sean Gares because they hate it when people block negotiate. Because when we boycotted MSI, me and Doe and Papa Smithy, and basically made sure that they were not going to get Korean experts in a game dominated by Korean teams, it makes their event look super bad because they don't have the expertise. So when it comes
just to be clear, I just want to add at that juncture, just to be clear, if anyone's in any doubt about what the kind of like final point for how we end up with DDK and Sean not commentating anymore, it was the fact that they wanted to be an exclusive duo and actively said to Riot, stop breaking us up. Sean was made to be an analyst at one event. He said, I didn't want to do that. He was deliberately kept away from DDK. They kept saying to them, exclusive duos, it's not going to work in the VALORANT space. And they were like, for a game this complicated, that is the only way a partnership can reach the level that we want to get to. And unfortunately, all it takes, like every minor criticism of Riot or any deviation from their ideas, they consider it high treason. And high treason is a death penalty offense.
Yes.
And that's what you fucking get every time with them. That is literally why we're here now.
Yeah.
It's the old office corporate culture. You're not a team player. It's that vibe, you know.
Yeah.
So to explain like how it works in traditional sports casting, right? The NFL will like sell media rights to different broadcasters like Fox and ESPN and ABC and Amazon now, right? And so when they sell those rights, it's up to the broadcasters in order to select the commentators for that game. And so because they're in competition with each other and they know, like literally the only logic behind this is they know that if they get Tony Romo, people will watch it who wouldn't watch otherwise because Tony Romo is casting this game, which is true. I do that sometimes with the NFL. I will literally select a game because somebody is commentating. Or now they're doing the Manning cast where they have Peyton and Eli do their own kind of like live stream, like watch party, basically.
Basically a co-stream type thing.
Yeah, it's basically a co-stream. And that they're paying these guys millions and millions of dollars. And casters are paid very well in the NFL. So for example, Amazon allegedly, there was a leak, offered Sean McVay, who is the head coach of the Rams, the Super Bowl winning team, $100 million contract over 5 years to come do Thursday Night Football that Amazon owns. Okay. And so it's almost certainly more than he's getting paid as a coach, by the way, and puts him into like the upper echelon of what players are getting paid.
Yes.
Now he allegedly turned that deal down, but you see there is real competition between the broadcasters to get prestigious broadcast talent on the games. And this is what happens in a game like Counter-Strike that actually has an open ecosystem, is there is a bidding process for some of the top talent. That does happen. And as a result, Counter-Strike talent is generally better compensated and better treated than talent in games that are operated by developers that have monopolies.
Yeah, a couple of things to say. One, on that point as well, this is why, though, I think a lot of these guys, because you notice these are people coming from CSGO in particular, this is why they really did just walk into this. They might have had advice. Richard said he spoke to some of them. I'd spoken to other people who were talent from CSGO. But I think a lot of them, it sort of went in one ear and went out the other. And they blithely just walked into the game. And what the mistake they made was this. The game is like CSGO. The scene is nothing like CSGO because of the developer and the way they run it. And the problem they had was, if you come from CSGO, I always say to my friends in CSGO, I've told fucking Simple this a million times. I told him, mate, you wouldn't even have made it 2 years in League of Legends. You'd have been ultra banned and you would have been painted as the ultimate villain and nobody would give a fuck what you say. Like, you don't know how insane the leeway we have in CSGO is. As much as we bitch about Valve, we bitch that they don't do anything. Not that they're doing all this fucked up shit. We actually bitch that it seems that they don't care. But the premise is that has allowed lots of things. Like, I'll give you an example, right? When I had my whole incident with ESL in 2014, was that the end of my career? Did I never do any events? No, I did like 50 events and 7 more majors after that. Why was I able to do that? Because there are other people in the space I could go and work for. And if through doing that, there was a sense that it was popularity, even ESL and Blast, who I had directly mocked and derided for years, had to eventually say, actually, we want to sort of be in the Thorin business, so do you want to come back and do these events?
I was in the office when these
that
conversations
could never
were happening.
happen. That would never. That is not even conceivable in a Riot game. That could never happen. Yeah,
the begrudging like identification of like, fuck, we need Duncan back, don't we? And they're like, yeah, well, fucking ring the man up. You know, I like that what he talked about, like this attempt to sort of break up talent, because I think the way that Riot justify it is actually just fucking insane. When I talked to them about it, and like they wanted me on desk as well at this LCQ event, which I didn't sign up for, but yeah, it's like, it's fine. But they love using the excuse of breaking up duos to say, well, you know, like you can train this person up. You know, they can get this experience, and you know, you can work with them and sort of help them develop. And I'm sat there thinking, hang on, where's my fucking talent development retainer? Secondly, casters can develop when they're not on air. Fucking shocking. You actually don't have to watch a caster pupate and fucking sit there and then just burst out like Heimlich from fucking Bug's Life on air. This can actually occur in the other 98% of the week that they are breathing. You know what I mean? Yep. But they was like, no, like we want to help develop our other talent. I'm like, okay, first of all, like I like helping other talent because I do believe that a rising tide lifts all ships because I like the competition. I fucking thrive off that shit. Been doing it for years. But you are basically saying train your replacement who will definitely pay less and continue to pay less even when they are, you know, good or you know, good enough or better than you, so we can sort of bring them in. And I said, like, well, how hard is it for me to sit with a caster? Maybe I'll do this, you know, out of good faith and go over a VOD with them. You know what I mean? Why the fuck does my quality of broadcast, which is only as strong as the weakest caster on the desk, have to be affected by that? My stock gets tanked, so you can, you know, try and reduce my leverage in the future, presumably by saying, he didn't have a really good year though, did he? I mean, he was with, you know, bloody Dingo Dale from down the road. Didn't go the way I would have wanted it to. He's washed up. I'm like, hang on, I'm fucking, you know, I'm casting next to a warm prop. What do you want from me? And often when this happens, when you're casting with someone who is less experienced, you fucking steamroll them. You look like a sick cunt, and they look like they have no idea what they're doing. They look worse, and you look better. It's so asymmetrical. But this is the reasoning, and I'm actually having these conversations with people that Riot hired to deal with me, fucking poor bastards who have no idea how to evaluate casting. They try and get an idea of what other people think about casters. They go to Reddit. They don't get any further than the hive mind, right? They got no fucking idea. And I'm trying to have a philosophical battle with them, someone who doesn't know about casting, about, you know, why this is bad. And I get the answer, well, this is just our philosophy here at Riot Games. And I'm like, has Waylon Roselle just shat in the well and you've all been sipping it for fucking years? Like, you are so and these people are so bought in to these ideologies and like these ideas about casting that these people have never fucking picked up a mic, have just developed somehow, and then they've just disseminated it like it is the fucking, like it's the golden tablets and fucking what's his face in Mormonism. You know, like, I cannot believe that I have to try and teach the most fundamental lessons about casting to these people who are fucking thrown in front of me to try and take the brunt as I come charging through the wall. And this happens to everybody. And they were doing it with Sean and Dan, and, you know, they had to mix up with casters all the time. But you know who didn't have to do it for very long? Over in Europe, they don't fucking mix their casters up. Why do you think that is? Because there are certain people on that broadcast team they really want to appease. They really need to keep around. They really need to keep them around. And so they will do what they ask. Fuck everybody else. And, you know, what's good for you is not good for me.
To be fair, at LEC, they still mix broadcasters a lot, but they do it a lot less than LCS that never has like stable pairings.
Those officers don't get on. Like they,
I was just going to say.
Also, surprisingly, LEC is operated by Quickshot, a literal caster who may understand these things.
An actual example of what we were asking.
Yeah.
By the way, can anyone tell that Uber as a kid now, his reference, his go-to was Bug's Life. Like, I remember seeing it, but that was like 20 years ago now. I can't even remember that character. Fair enough. Okay.
That's like
I remember because he was a fucking gigantic
deep
caterpillar, wasn't he? His wings were this big. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the Pixar deep cut right there.
Right, there you go.
That's the deep Pixar lore.
At least you're showing them the classics. That's the main thing. But yeah, look, and obviously people don't even understand that dynamic. The European office will always have a bit more leeway, not just because of the management that are running it, but that obviously helps. But in Riot Games, there is like this hardcore contingent of just like the old school, you know, managers and founders, and they will always be sticking their fingers in the fucking gumbo till the end of time. They will never. They're not going anywhere. They're never going to be fired. Doesn't matter what happens at the company. Doesn't matter how many lawsuits, how many fucking scandals, how much negative press. They will always be there. And if they see something they don't like, the way their corporate structure works, they can just lean over and go, "Yeah, don't hire him. Don't do that. Don't do that." And a lot of it is predicated on like petty grievances, but obviously as well, Yeah, there's this fucked up, like, just in general, North American bias. Like, one of the things that's going on right now, by the way, is the North American office in Valorant is considering airlifting the best talent out of Europe with, like, lucrative deals for, like, individuals or whatever to come and make their broadcast better. And they're constantly in their ear. I talk to everybody. I know what's going on over there. It's like, you've got a good thing going in Europe, but yeah, they're, like, breaking up the best fucking duo in NA, and then they're like looking over at Europe going, we should just get them to move out to NA and make our broadcast better. Like, well, you know, it's like a sick joke. It's fucking ridiculous.
One thing I thought we should mention, though, is this, right? I'll actually, for one moment, play devil's advocate, but not for Riot Games. I'll just for the premise itself that, like, here's the problem. There has been a very high-profile, notable case where a casting duo did all the things that would make these TOs afraid of letting anyone else get the keys to the car. And that was obviously the Godfathers, Tasteless and Artosless, when they ran the game in StarCraft 2. And just understand this if you're a fan. They had transcended the game. It was more important that Tasteless and Artosis casted the game than the best player in the world be playing in the game. It was
extremely important at the time.
That was the whole nature of why the game was enormous in the West with the broadcast, which, if people know, tended to be the most casual esports fans, because to be fair, that's just actually when esports was getting bigger and it wasn't just hardcore people anymore. And the problem was they used the fact that they were an established duo and that you had to hire them, and they basically exploited that to their nth degree, basically. Like, they themselves pulled some of these games, like rates fixing, like telling other people the same equivalent that the broadcasters in Valorant here. They would tell other people, well, if we're the number one duo and we're the ones in the most demand, logically you have to charge whatever X minus 5 or what, you know, whatever the number is. Like, you can't ever be our number, otherwise then we have a problem, don't we? And like, essentially they did some of these things themselves. So I will say there is a famous case of it. With that said, their influence in terms of being able to do that died out about 8 years ago, or maybe slightly even more. So I do think, like, it's maybe can be used as like a boogeyman story if you're a TO or game dev. But I actually think it's actually just an example of where, guess what? Humans are corrupt. The caster themselves can be the person who does all that shit, obviously. Yeah.
And just on that point, Duncan, like, obviously, as someone who was around back then, I actually got to experience the kind of, like, how far the other way it can go in StarCraft, like in quite a negative way. You know, just like, so the company I was working for at the time, we were like doing a live StarCraft event. We went to try and hire like the best talent. Well, first of all, you had to sort of weave through the nightmare of who the talent would even sort of allow you to hire. Like, certainly in career as well, there was a bit of a cartel vibe going on with Tasteless and Artosis. Everyone knows that. But also there were other talent as well who were like, fuck that cartel. And they went too far the other way to try and break it. I think it was like Kaldor famously got fucking blackballed because any event they were working, he would fuck up people's rates by saying, I'll work it for free. You know, so
he really got his
classic.
fingers in there.
Yeah, you remember,
Kaldor did not fuck about.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, I get that.
A lot of casters didn't like Kaldor for that reason.
No, what? He's a douche.
Yeah, so you had that going on, but like, just to give you an idea, so this is like, I don't even know, like 2011 we're talking, is it? Like 2012? Kind of like, yeah, about there. So, you know, when we tried to hire Day 9 to do our event, his fucking rates were ridiculous. They'd be ridiculous by today's standards, by the way. It was something like 8K a day, maybe more. Like, it was fucking mental. It was like, can't really justify that. And then it's like, you know, you start seeing all the other diva shit creep into it. You start seeing, you know, he works a DreamHack, but he demands that the stage is named after him. It had to be called the Day 9 StarCraft stage, or he wasn't going to work the event for any money. He wanted to, like, fully use everything, you know, the fact that he was getting mainstream crossover appeal at that time, and by the way, wanted his own fucking green room all by himself. You know, it was like fucking all the nightmare.
I had a positive imagination when I came back to ESL. I could have had a fucking stage at ESL Cologne. What was I doing? I could have been the Thorin stage. Oh, like, I just want to work the event.
Anyone will tell you from that time, if you had to deal with Tasteless, Artosis, Day 9, that kind of like Holy Trinity, and some other casters besides, it was a nightmare. It was like, you know, take all the blue M&Ms out the bowl type bullshit. They were fucking divas, and they remained so to this day, even though they fell off like fuck. But you know, but so with that plus the D-man situation, because obviously Riot Games have heard the same stories.
Yeah, true.
right? And then obviously the D-Man situation, which for those who don't remember, our Lord and fucking Savior D-Man, who by the way will be running all of this type of shit when he was at ESL, breaking up duos, inserting himself into finals, mad fucking narcissist that he was, right? He basically leveraged Reddit into getting a paid job at Riot Games. He said, I can't commentate anymore on League of Legends. And at the time, him and Joe were the beloved duo. Again, one of the best duos in esports history. He said, I can't justify it. I'm not making enough money as a freelancer. So cue the Reddit thread. And as Mitch has rightly identified, Riot Games don't get past the hive mind. They don't think like, maybe we shouldn't get bent over here, or maybe we can work something out. Maybe we could just increase his freelancer rates. Who knows? Instead, they go, look at that fucking 2,000 comment Reddit thread on the front page saying Riot Games is bad if we don't hire D-Man. Fucking hell, guess we better add. But unfortunately, what D-Man did, he was all smug and fucking cock of the north after that. What he did is he set a precedent that Riot Games were never going to get bent over by talent ever again. And so in many ways, all the problems we've got now, I'll lay it all on D-Man's doorstep, shall I? No, I won't do that.
That is a ridiculous idea. But I will say though, Richard.
He's over there. He's casting brawl stars. His ears are burning. He's fucking busy talking to...
Indeed.
Oh, motherfucker.
Listen, to be fair, most viewers that have heard his name in a few years. No. The other thing I would say is this, though. To be fair, though, even D-Man's case shows, by the way, you'll never get away with it, because what happened when finally he had his moment? They put all the daggers in this motherfucker's back. And then if you know the story, that not only did they not even slightly accommodate him when he just wanted to live in the same country and travel there, by the way, to maintain a fucking relationship, perfectly reasonable reason to say I can't move right now. Not only did they not help him out, but then later, people might know this story because me and Richard have told it because it's just so fucking tragic. Later, he actually decided he did want to be a caster in League of Legends when it didn't work out in CSGO, and they intentionally put this guy through the ringer where he had to go for like 1 million interviews and all this like humiliating shit where you're basically getting interviewed by people who like essentially you shouldn't even be fucking be qualified to pick your jockstrap up, and at the end of it all just went, sorry, don't call us, we'll call you, and then just left him next to a fucking phone never to ring.
I was in the office when that happened, when he was fucking coming and looking fucking Prada bags under his eyes. He'd been around the world for, through like a bunch of fucking, random folk who barely knew who he was. I remember when he came back from America, I felt fucking awful for the guy, really.
It's like a humiliation ritual, doesn't it? It sounds fucked up. Because
like,
they present it like,
similar, and the fucking, in the IEM final, right? This was kind of after that. So, guy kind of fucking put a stick in his spokes, didn't he?
Listen, obviously he did some shit, but I'm just saying on the Riot side, it's like they, because the way they would cleverly present what they were doing with those interviews is they just make it sound like, in our company, everyone has to be comfortable that you join, so you just got to check, like, the temperature.
But you already worked with him for years. You know exactly who he is.
The culture fit, yeah.
The reality is what they were actually doing was essentially a sort of fucked up hazing ritual, and if you get through it, they think you're cool, you get to join the frat sort of, that's like the vibe,
No, it's like, we've been hurt our trust a little bit, you didn't come with us before and might take a while to rebuild that. They fucking love that shit. They never forget. They never forgive. And even if they end up working with you, mate, they'll always remind you.
There's so much psychic warfare going on here. This is one of the reasons I lit up the episode at the beginning.
This is what I was going to say. It's a good point to pivot, because what I've heard is going on among the Valorant talent, among other things, is, so for example, after I did my opinion piece about Sean and DDK and basically listed all of Riot Games, well, that wasn't even all, it probably wasn't even 25%, but it was a comprehensive list of some of their most egregious controlling decisions. But there was a number of people behind the scenes who reached out to me and said, holy fucking shit, that bit about the fealty testing is absolutely spot on. And what they're doing is like, why do you ever need to do this? It's so, and why would anyone sort of like acquiesce to this? I don't know. But what they do is, by way of for instance, is they go to a duo, an established duo, and they go to the one caster and they say, look, listen, we really like you, but we don't like your partner. Just a heads up, you should maybe cast a few games with some other people. And then they go to the other partner in that duo and say, don't tell your partner, but we really like you. We don't like them. It'd be good if you cast with other people. And I've had a number
come out of a fucking Lindsay Lohan movie in the 90s. What the fuck is this? This is some high school shit.
It's absolutely pathetic.
Shit. What is this?
And put it this way, that's not one member of talent telling me that. That's multiple members of talent telling me that is just when they read that in the article, they were like, holy fucking shit. They've done that to us. We just found out, or so why would you be doing that if you're not actively trying to fuck with talent. Also, just as another thing as well, by the way, they have also, and I know this for a fact. So for me, rates, discussing your day rate, it should be relatively private. Like you should, if I've got my day rate, if I want to share it with other talent, I can. But if I go to someone and say, this is my rate, I don't expect them to then tell that rate to somebody else. I think that's highly unprofessional if you do that. Yeah. And obviously, guess what? I've talked to a number of talent in Valorant who have been proactively told other talents' rates, not by the talent, but by Riot or a entity that are hiring on behalf of Riot. That's fucking outrageous.
Presumably in the scenario of like, you're asking for that, but this guy who's bigger than you only asks for 100 less.
Basically done for two things. First of all, as part of a sort of secret haggling process. But then the other component of it, of course, is, it brings rates down overall, encourages undercutting. If I say to you, like, listen, you and this guy are similar, they're asking, 5K a day. It's outrageous. And we're not willing to go beyond this. We think you're worth that. Suddenly you're going, all right, okay, yeah, I guess overall that is a bit wild. I guess I'll have to bring my rates down and think accordingly. They just keep everyone on fucking tenterhooks. It's all part of this like insane game that they play with talent. And what it ultimately boils down to, it is about the money, sure, but it is also just about they want to see who will betray everyone else in the scene, betray the scene itself to swear fealty to Riot. And if you do that enough and you do it often and you fuck everybody else, who knows, you might even get invited to the table.
If you reduce the leverage enough.
Yeah. But here's the thing, guys, and here's why the casters have no power, because Valorant probably is going to franchise. It's like we said earlier, there aren't many TOs that want to pick this up right now. It's probably going to be franchised because Riot wants to sell the franchises. And then once the franchise system exists, they're going to get rid of co-streaming. Look at what happened to co-streaming with LCS. You can see they just keep cutting it down, cutting it down, cutting it down. And the reason is because they cannot sell sponsors against things that are heavily co-streamed. Or it's a lot less attractive, at least, to get sponsors against things that are heavily co-streamed. That's been my experience talking to sponsors. Okay, they're wise to it now. I think they would initially, at the very beginning, you could probably dupe them, be like, look at our viewership numbers. They wouldn't ask questions, but now there are increasingly more questions in the space about what percentage of this is co-streamed, etc. Because they don't necessarily get the same brand value from the shoutouts from the co-streamer or the attention to detail on the sponsors that is required on the mainstream. Also, you can't necessarily control what the co-streamer says. A lot of the LCS co-streamers were very negative about the LCS, made it look like a garbage product. Therefore, you get the association of it being garbage with your brand. Sponsors don't like that. So what's going to happen is you're probably going to franchise at some point in time. And then, because when they cut off co-streaming or cut it down dramatically, they're going to be everybody's just going to have to watch on their stream. And it doesn't matter what casters they have, guys. It doesn't matter. And it's the only place you can go. So you're going to have to accept whatever rates they offer. And that's just it. And they play this game, and they're going to cut rates, by the way, because the LoL rates are higher. The viewership will be lower for Valorant. And they have
year after year, they'll snip a bit off each time. Yep.
Or they'll just slow growth on caster rates. And the reason they can do this, guys, is because they'll be like, well, our budget is only XYZ, because we've talked about this on other shows. There is no transparency into how much money the esports marketing project is creating. We don't know, because the developers won't share it with anybody, including the partner teams on franchising, how much money they estimate that they make from retaining people in esports. How much money does the average esports fan spend in the game compared to a non-esports fan? I'd guess it's a lot more. Pretty sure they would have stopped doing this if they didn't think they were making money, significant amounts of money, having extreme player retention among esports fans. And they can track this, guys. If you're logged in getting drops, they can see your account. They say, well, my favorite player just played with this skin. They see, oh, there go the skin sales up right after that game, right? Or in the next few days. So there are all these ways that are hidden, so they can say, oh, I'm really struggling financially, because all that's siloed off from everyone else in the esports scene, right? It's very clear if you're an independent tournament operator, how much money you're making and losing based on the sponsorships and the sales and the media rights, which is another issue we'll get into. But what Riot uses every trick in the book. What they did to me was egregious in and of itself. The first world championship for League of Legends that I worked in 2013. First off, They tried to lie to me. They told me my contract with OGN, a separate company, which was a TV station in Korea, my contract with them for League of Legends to do the Korean League applied to Riot's International World Championship. So they tried to get me to do it for zero money. And when I said, whoa, no. That they're like, oh, it's our partner. I'm like, that's not my contract, guys. Like, that's scummy.
They attempted a Jedi mind trick, though.
Yeah, it was a nice attempt. They did actually succeed the Jedi mind trick on double lift and Crepo for that world championship.
Perfect,
they ended up saying, oh, well, the exposure will be worth it for World. So they tried the exposure trick. And then they tried, we'll pay you $3,000, not a day, for an entire world championship where I was on the desk for every fucking game of the whole world championship. I probably made, if you count all my research, all the time that I had to put in meetings and everything like that, I was probably legit like making like $15 an hour to be at the Staples Center and broadcasting the world championship. And you know what's worse, guys? There were two pro players on the desk.
Standard, right? Yeah.
There were two other pro players on the desk, Crepo and Double Lift, and Riot told them that their player contracts with their teams covered the world championship. So they made $0 for being on every single game at the world championship. So you guys ask like why I'm frustrated with Riot. So they pulled that trick. I did it anyway because I wanted the exposure, and I did gain something from it, right? But it's still ethically wrong to do what they did. And then the whole thing, why it came to a boiling point and why the Korean casters, including myself, Doa and Papa Smithy, boycotted MSI was because I talked to casters in 7 different games, and we were on a call, and I said, here's the rate for Halo. Here's the rate for StarCraft. Here's the rate for Dota. Here's the rate for Counter-Strike for top casters. And I gave them ranges, outlined it all. And I was like, we just want an industry standard rate. That's all we want. And they said, they tried to gaslight us. This is literally what they said on the call. Those are not industry standard rates. We are the industry standard rate. And at that point, I was like, okay, like we've completely broken down at this point in time. There is no more negotiating because they thought they could strong arm us into do it. And they thought they could break us apart. And they tried to break us apart separately and trying to offer us different deals and blah, blah, blah. And we fortunately stood strong on that one. And eventually, like, barring other shit that happened with me that was unrelated to this bargaining, people did get better rates for events in the future. And it actually, like, in many ways, after I revealed a lot of this information, a lot of Riot casters then had their salaries, like, sometimes doubled because they were getting paid such shit amounts of money by Riot and not making any money, as I said, doing IEM events. And they would get paid the same amount of money if they were selected to do international events, which, by the way, is months of international travel. And they would get paid the exact same amount of money because they were full-time employees and they weren't on day rates, et cetera, and they weren't on these contracts. So there was a massive, massive, massive history of Riot behaving in extremely bad faith in negotiations. And guess what, guys? All the people who did this, they're still there. They're still doing this, guys. They're still there. So apparently... It's the exact same people. And you can tell that clearly Riot is totally okay with this. They're totally fine with it because they probably think these guys are doing a great job, right? And from a talent perspective, that's why it is worthless. And that's why you see talent just hitting a wall and leaving, especially developer-run esports, to try and do other things because there isn't a way you can get paid as much as even a mediocre player in a lot of these games. There isn't an appreciation of your ability, of your dedication to the game, of your knowledge of the game's history. They will literally throw you out at the first opportunity because they don't care about these things. They don't care about your skill because when you have a monopoly, people are going to watch that stream no matter what. They don't have to choose between 2 different broadcasters. And here, guys, I can even prove to you how important casters are when there are multiple broadcasts. Back in the day, when I was working at OGN, now, Blizzard did a very stupid deal where we had to broadcast the same games of StarCraft that Tasteless and Artosis did. And the thing is when they made WCS, which was the Blizzard official StarCraft, like, global league, they made it so GSL, like Code S, would alternate with OGN's Star League, okay? But they said, oh, well, we're just going to have 2 English casts, but whoever is, the studio will change. So sometimes it was Tasteless and Artosis at the GSL studio. They were in the studio, had all the fancy shots, all the production value. And Doa and I were in like an empty room, basically, right? It was a lot more boring. Now, sometimes they were, for a season, Star League was in the OGN studio. So we had all the fancy shots, and Tasteless and Artosis were in a room. Tasteless and Artosis obviously crushed me and Doa in terms of viewership. Crushed it when they were alone in the studio. Then, in League of Legends, we saw the exact same thing. Oh, well, Riot comes in and they said, OGN, you don't get to broadcast all of the games. We're splitting up the days between OGN and SPO TV, which is a different place with a different studio. Now, SPO TV would get their own casters. And
LS.
Yeah, they got LS. And now, at that time, myself and Doa and Achilleos, right, and Papa Smithy would literally sit in a fucking closet, like basically just like a soundproof closet at the OGN studio. And we would have 95% of the viewership of the games in the SPO TV studio. So you can tell instantly how valuable those commentators are, because I've been on both the 5% and the 95% part of that equation with people who are well known within those games. So you cannot come and tell me that there isn't value to commentators, because it has been fucking proven by these broadcasts in Korea of having different people commentate the same games. And even though there are sometimes games in which the favorite commentators aren't on site and are doing a scuffed ass, basically co-stream, they still get all the viewership.
The Overwatch League has done a lot of these sort of surveys, and they've really tried to quantify the effect of casting. And what I can say is that, like, there's a drastic effect. I would say that like 95% or 90% of viewers probably don't care who's casting unless it's like the top known names, then they care. But otherwise, like, they don't. Like, it does move the needle in a big way for them. And I think the Overwatch League has gone to great extent. I think they went to sort of focus groups and survey to try and find a way to, like, can we like drop some of these rates down at the high end? And they realized that, oh fuck, the data doesn't actually agree with what our inclination is. I know they wanted to drop my rate, for example, but the data did not support their position, so to speak. So the studies have been done, whether it's how esports drives MTX and retention in game, or how casters, or broadcast quality drives viewership. These studies have all been done. It should be empirical by now, and yet we're still having to. Casters are still having to try and carve out a niche and say, hey, we actually do bring value here, and that's proportional to how long we've worked. How much exposure and experience we've had, whether we have the right pairing, all that sort of stuff. Like, we still have to go back and have these same conversations and find ways to prove it to these people when they have the data that agrees with us, but they, do what they want with it. So,
by the way, Monty, I just want to clarify something. On that story, this was from 2016, if we remember, where Monty and Doa and Papa Smithy did the boycott around MSI. Right, as you said, when you surveyed other people as to what, like, industry rates were, right? So we're talking about the Riot casters, the ones that have the Riot in front of their name and on LCS and Worlds and MSI. And as we're saying, Monty's saying they just had one flat yearly salary and they would do all these events, right? Like, off the top, give me a range. Weren't they making something like, wasn't it like between like 50 and 100k or something, right? That was like the kind of salary they were on yearly, right? This is the reason why I can tell you Riot Games are liars, because I remember the year Monty's talking about. I just looked it up now because I have all my like data in file, right? And I looked up for that year, 2016, which, by the way, wasn't even the biggest year of CSGO. Like, we had a couple of years later where the rates went up like 1.5, 2 times the amount. For 2016, just my CSGO events, I made over 100k. And that was my side gig. I was a journalist and I did events on the side. Now, remember, these people were working full time. They had like Uber did when he worked for ESL. Like, the days they're not on broadcast, by the way, they're in a fucking office doing meetings and production things and improv classes and all. Like, they essentially had a full-time job and doing these giant international events, like Monty says, where you go and you get absolutely wrecked, by the way. You need like 2 weeks nowadays to recover from that shit. That's how hard it is. Yeah. And they were making less than I was in a side game, which, if you believed all the stuff about franchises, you should never be able to pay casters. But the problem was the side game had an open circuit and all these things we've talked about that can raise rates and make it so there's competition and that you have to hire certain people if they are the best, etc. So you can see the effect it can have. Essentially, if Monty and them didn't do that, those Riot casters would just be trapped in that fucking prison for the rest of their careers. That would just be the choice would be either don't get to cast on the broadcast or take it for this money. They kind of were over a barrel at that point in time. So I just thought I'd say that to show, like, remember, I wasn't even close to the highest paid caster in the world in esports. Like, 100k is nothing compared to what Monty amount he was making at the time for his OGN contract. Like, I think people realize they don't know essentially how bad the lives of their favorite casters, fucking Freak, Kobe, Jack, there's a reason why some of these people later on separated themselves or did other things or got mega fucking promotions, etc. These guys were getting min-maxed, even the best casters.
Yeah, I mean, and I think people, like, if you look at people like Jat, he was definitely at the top of the pay scale as far as casters, but he still left to go coach, guys. That's because there is there's a fucking ceiling to this shit that doesn't exist. Like, most broadcasters in like the NFL make more than most head coaches, or it's comparable, right? It's comparable, and it's just not there. Like, as the scene expands, because again, the developers are able to like hide the money that they're making from this, and Uber was talking about this on Twitter as well, but there are no media rights deals, right? That's where most money from sports comes from, is from selling the ability to broadcast the game to media networks. And we don't have that at all because Twitch has a monopoly. Now, I do think that even if the TOs were selling the media rights like Overwatch League did, right, for famously $100 million for 2 years.
Yeah,
now, I don't think that trickles down to dev-run games, because again, they'll just take all that money and say, well, we can get anybody because we have a monopoly. So I don't think that would actually affect caster rates, because they'll just keep.
Well, it's a loss leader half the time anyway. Like, like this is what fucking LCS. It's not profitable. Don't even imagine. Like the Overwatch League, they have to like deliver ROI to investors. So there is like some degree where they need to try and let the black box of the league turn out a profit. But how are they going to justify like allocating a reasonable size of budget when these things just hemorrhage money because they can't fucking monetize so many aspects of it? It definitely affects things. And like we had this Overwatch League, guys, every year since the Overwatch League started, the caster budget has been cut every fucking year.
By the way, it didn't go up when allegedly they got a very good deal from YouTube, guys.
Fuck no.
Weird how that went.
They never tell you.
Went down when that happened.
And I go, who the fuck set these, right? Who set this budget? And they're like, oh, it was set last year, well in advance. Like, they fucking set budgets months before they start negotiating. So what they do, they get the little fucking Hello Kitty pad out. They go, right, well, yeah, we're definitely not going to have to pay more than this for this guy and this for that guy. And they make these assumptions on what these salaries going to cost them that are baseless and often come from none of their, like, them not understanding at all how casting works. How
they also never
get
pay cuts. You notice that? Yeah,
like... fuck no, absolutely not. And so then they go, okay, yeah, here's what we need. Budget gets set. Then they come to us, and then we go, hang on, that ain't it. They're like, the budget, we can't get any more money. It's just this is it. And I would assume that a lot of the reason why Sean and Dan had problems was budgetary as well. Because here's what people don't realize: the people running VALORANT Esports were also running Legends of Runeterra and Wild Rift Esports. It was those three all at once. It was this tiny ass understaffed team, and eventually they probably put a lot more attention towards Wild Rift. But for a while, it was just that. So like, they had no idea how to sort of what they were supposed to be paying casters. That's why they outsourced all of it to fucking Nerd Street. Although they did definitely give some oversight on how much was reasonable to pay people. I don't know if they fixed rates in the negative or the positive, but I know that there was definitely dialogue there. But whenever you ask where these budgets come from, someone just waves their hands and then they forget they're even talking to you.
Well, Sean even said it himself on his first stream after it happened. He said, like, so first of all, he was like, listen, I took a 20% pay cut over the year, which is like, since then the dollar's fucking tanked. You got all this inflation shit going on, obviously, as well. I mean, like, some of these people like live in California, like that shit ain't cheap. Living expenses never really gets factored into any of this. It was why
I mean, Richard, I made more money casting in Korea relative to cost than I did moving back to America, because
totally believe
way
it.
less expensive to live in Korea.
Totally believe it. And so you've got that, and then on top of that, Sean even said, like, look, he just wants to be there. So listen, there's a world of difference between.
He said he would do it for free.
Yeah, there's a world of difference between, and I want to make this clear. There's a world of difference between saying you'll do it for free to essentially undercut like all of the talent and make sure somebody else doesn't get hired, and just saying somebody who should have been hired, sort of saying, listen, it's not about money, I would do it for free. I think a lot of people misunderstood Sean.
I took it to be more hyperbolic, like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I want to make that clear, because that came up a few times after my article and subsequent stream about it. But but this is the reality is, you give up your money to get in, and then it just seems to be there's always like this expectation that, listen, we're having a hard time, the product's having a hard time, these rates need to keep coming down. And it's like, well, you can only go so fucking low for what you do. I also do want to say as well, I fucking hate the way that a lot of people who hire talent, remember I was doing that when I was at WSOE, why are they so convinced that they need to haggle? You know, you're not in a marketplace in fucking Marrakesh or something, homie. Like, why? I've never met anyone when I've tried to hire talent, like where it's, you know, like they're super shocked if I go, what do you think you're worth? What's a fair rate for you? And they've gone, yeah, and I've gone, okay, it's done. Fuck it. Like, you know your own value, and I know commensurate to what you're going to bring to a broadcast if that value is fair. That's it. There shouldn't be, you give me your rate and then I try and knock you down just for the sake of it. Like, what? It's just fucking weird. Like, and that goes on all the time, even with long-term business partners, long-term, you know, freelancers. You know, ESL are fucking notorious for that shit, by the way. And it's like, you're always constantly having to like haggle to get what you got the last time, because they keep trying to gaslight you into telling you things have changed. Well, that's got to stop now that they've fucking got the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund back.
I think it will. To be fair, like, I think it will. And at least in my negotiations with Face It, like, they've never, you know, like, for example, when I've done Face It events that were not Counter-Strike stuff or worked for them, they've never actually like tried to screw me over.
Yeah.
So, but it's,
yeah, you caught him in that sweet 2-year span, Monty. Yeah, congrats. Wish it could have been the same for all of us.
We'll
Wish
see.
it could have been the same for all of us.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes, right? Because as Richard says, now that they have money, in theory, they should be able to offer people multi-year deals, right?
Weird how trickle-down economics never fucking actually trickles down from the people who've got the money that could make it trickle down.
Because the only thing that's down is the fucking diarrhea.
This does segue though into a key point, and particularly Riot Games of all the devs is the most guilty of this. Here's one reason why they would haggle with you as well, Richard. Just to psychically have one up on you.
Yes.
Just to put you under their boot and make sure you look up at them from the boot and realize you are under the boot. And that at no point in time do you ever imagine in this dynamic you have the upper hand. Even though, by the way, expressly, I'm coming to you essentially in good faith and saying you're one of the best talents in the world and I want to have you on my event because it would make it better. But I'm not going to treat you that way. I'm going to treat you like you're the last little orphan trying to get in fucking room at the inn, and I might let you in if you do what I say. Like, that's the worst part about it. They take the best talents and they treat them like they're like the fucking runaway. I want to make it in Hollywood. And they're like, you know, you want to come to a party, love? Like, fucking hell. Why do they have to crawl across glass to get a job that they're the best in the world at? Because one of the other things I've heard that they're doing in VALORANT as well, and if I look literally look at the talent pages on Liquipedia for all the VALORANT events, it lines up with what people have told me, which is that they've also done another of my biggest pet peeves for anyone hiring talent, which is you just go out there and you engage with all the talent you can find with the express intention of using rates against each other. But more importantly, you want an enormous turnover so that they all feel uncertainty. So what you want it to feel like is none of us could be here next time. And in fact, because they've asked like 30 people and they're only going to hire, let's say, 12 or whatever, actually, we're just making sure that once it gets around to everyone, they asked you as well, and they asked me, and they asked Margaret, like, at that point in time, even though, as I said, in good faith, you're supposed to be approaching the guy you want to do your event, you're making it feel the opposite way, like it's an exclusive club, and now you're on some like musical chair shit where only 12 is going to get in out of 30. It's like, you can see psychically how this is a very effective manipulation tool. You don't even have to actually expressly say it to the guy, I'm fucking you over. He sort of senses it, you know.
It's worse than that too, because what they do is they go, charge us a half rate. Oh, you're doing 1 best of 3. Oh, we can't pay you standard rate. You know, like I literally asked someone the other day, I'm like, okay, what are you fucking getting paid straight up? And they're like, oh, this much, but I'm only doing 1 best of 3. I don't give a shit. I don't get out of bed for less than a fucking day rate, motherfucker. Like, you cannot, I don't know when this idea just appeared where people started going, what's your half day rate? What's your COVID day rate? What's your fucking supplying your own gear and sitting in front of your desk day rate? You know what I mean? Like, I understand like some rates maybe you've got like maybe nominally lower because you're at home and you got, you know, there's less overhead for TO. That's fine. But like some of them are just egregious. And the fact that so many TOs are also using a pandemic scenario to try and force these prices down, and the half rate is just absurd. Just a message to casters out there: If someone offers you a half rate, tell them to fuck off. All right. What are you going to do? You're going to cast one thing in the morning, one thing in the afternoon. Is that how it works? No, it's not.
Yeah,
you spend the day preparing.
The same
all this
amount of
off-camera
research.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's what people think. It's like, well, when you charge a day rate, that also includes the 4 days of prep that you did on this tournament. Because oftentimes, especially for tournaments, you don't know what games you're going to cast, so you have to be prepped for everything. And also,
this
if
is
you're doing
why,
your job
by the
halfway
way,
correctly, you should be prepped for everything.
This is why during the major there was an incident that really triggered people like me and Richard, because unfortunately fans assumed, right, that because there was that whole thing of would Bardolph cast the semi-finals or not, their assumption was, well, he's also getting his money taken, isn't he? It's like, no, that's not the way CSGO works. In CSGO, you are just hired for the event, and if you cast 1 game a day or 3, you just do a day rate, that's it. And so, by the way, for the event, because no one knows who's doing the playoffs, everyone gets all their days. So that means, yes, you all know that DDK and Bardolph did 1 playoff. They got all the other days. They got the other quarterfinal day, the semi-final day, and the final, which they did not work. Although I'll give good DDK.
Sadikist even got paid for the day he was deported.
There you go.
Just beat that for a fucking.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
But no, like, but one thing I do want to discuss here, and especially.
And by the way, shout out to whoever figured that out, paying Sadikist to fuck off. That's an innovative idea. No one's thought of that one yet. No one's thought of that
one. Here's one thing I do want to talk about, because I copped a lot of heat for this, where it was like a lot of people don't seem to understand that why it's bad for the ecosystem, why it's bad for the broadcast. Because you know, they were going, well, it's it's in Riot Games' interest to do this. This would be like how it would work in any other gig economy. This is how it would work. Yeah, this is how it would work in an office. I mean, I had some guy like spamming me on about 20 accounts saying, why can't you explain that in an office? If I refuse to do a job for a certain amount, they could just fire me and hire somebody else to do my job for less money. That's good business sense. You're so anti-Riot Games. And yeah, exactly. This is just capitalism. What are you, a fucking communist? I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Why is it, by the way, if you ever critique any element of capitalism, there's always some weirdo guy who is actually the guy being fucked by capitalism, who dives across the bullet like, oh, get down, Mr. President. I have to defend my $14 an hour job. Get out.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, it's bad, isn't it? I know.
So, one of the reasons that I think it's bad is that, you know, I've seen the long-term benefits of us elevating our craft to make our broadcasts better, and how that actually does grow an ecosystem to a point where more and more people can take slightly larger slices of the pie. You know, CSGO is a key example of this. If we'd had all the fuckery and the rate fixing and all that bullshit at the start of CSGO, you don't go from Anders to Semler to, you know, Henry to Sadikist to, you know, Machine and Sponge, right? We don't have that progression. We don't have.
We even had events.
Million people watching the major, you know?
People have heard these stories before. We had such an amazing atmosphere because the game devs stayed the fuck out of the game, and we were actually able to block, sort of occasionally battle the ESLs of the world. We had events where people actively volunteered to have their rate reduced to get people that we all wanted to work with, like Moses, Yanko, onto the fucking broadcast. That, like, in a world that Riot is creating, you are creating the ultimate example, by the way, where the way you constantly treat the talent will make them become a mini version of you, and they'll also be ruthless as fuck and sell everyone else out and be battling each other and think of their colleague as actually like their competitor that they have to like keep a distance from. We had the opposite of that in CSGO, which is why, unfortunately, like, I don't think it's a coincidence that coincides with the golden age of the fucking game, because you probably had the best like camaraderie you could ever have behind the scenes. It was making it
banter was, to work the green room banter was insane. Just to be a fly on the wall for that in a couple CS events I worked. And these Valorant casters, mate, they're not fucking telling each other how much they make. They're not having these conversations. They're just not doing it. They're not comfortable. They're threatened by each other. There's you fucking, oh, this and that and the other, you know, can we get this event? Like, you know, and they're just, they're very, very, they're like putty in Riot's hands to sort of mold in their image ultimately. And mate, I know that they ran some workshops for casters, right? You know, and the people delivering the workshops were just as fucking indoctrinated, or those that weren't writers were just as, I'm just happy to be there as all the rest of them. You know what I mean? So it was like, I don't really feel like, you know, I even volunteered. I said, oh, get me in there. Go on. See, get me. I'm sure Blizzard let me do it. I'll go and try and, you know, impart some insights on all their casters. Yeah, no, fucking not a chance. So, you know, they are trying to keep the hamster wheel rolling again with their, you know, casters trying to sort of.
And just one other aspect to this, that also another reason why it's a bad thing and it actually hinders the growth of a game, is that it proactively encourages almost like a kind of very milquetoast, environment, which I think is detrimental to fans, detrimental to entertainment, detrimental to esports. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take Dota, for example. Now, people probably don't realize this because, I won Hell in a Cell in 2015 over in the Dota game. But I've worked with the Dota talent. I'm friends with many players. I really like the Dota talent. I think it's got an abundance of untapped potential. And why is it untapped? Well, here's why. Because Valve have this tournament called TI, and everybody wants to be there. And if you're not there, are you even real in Dota? And so as a result of that, first of all, critique about Valve. People are super nervous about that. We've recently seen I can't remember who it was, but it was sort of intimated that Valve were sort of implying maybe we just won't run TI if everyone's going to criticize us on social media about it. Which, of course, when it makes you like just instantly like 70 mil or 100 mil or whatever, like you never pull it.
It's so important. If people don't remember, I'll just reiterate one fact that's all you need to know about Valve. Every time you give money to the prize pool, they take 75% of the money that was originally there and keep it in their pocket. So what they're telling you is, you know what? If you guys don't stop complaining, I might stop letting you give me 75 cents on every dollar.
Yeah. I know, it's wild.
Please, I'm so scared.
So obviously you've got that. Then you had, so what ends up happening is it creates this chilling effect where talent is scared to criticize players on a broadcast, scared to criticize teams on a broadcast. Everything has to be good all of the time. Anyone who comes externally,
because otherwise they won't ask you to be hired next time.
Yeah, and everyone who comes externally into Dota gets like vitriolically attacked. And if they can't explain why you would buy this item in this situation because they're just asking a fucking interview question or hosting a desk, they get vitriolically attacked and told that Valve shouldn't have hired them. And everyone's like just so deferential to the scene and all that. And it just makes for a garbage. It makes for a garbage, not garbage. That's too harsh, but it makes for it makes for a diminished product. It makes for a piss weak product compared to what you get in these other, open circuit esports. Think about the golden age of StarCraft, golden age of CS:GO.
All of these things, by the way, if you look at like the titans of commentary, if you look at Tasteless and Artosis, one of the reasons why they are good and are still fucking good, arguably the best of all time, I would say.
They even do a bit of VALORANT if people don't know. You see Artosis sometimes does the events. So Tasteless does the casting in Korea sometimes. Interesting detail.
Yep.
So, but the reason why these guys were so good is because they had the freedom to be themselves and to create their own product and to create their own value. And like, certainly StarCraft isn't the game that it used to be, but StarCraft would be dead without them. I mean, the fact that they were able to create Patreons for the ASL and have the fans fund it is a testament to them and their strength as commentators. That's what people care even more about than the game. And Riot cannot have that happen for whatever reason. Now, are they happy to have Tarek and Shroud get more viewers than their main broadcast? I guess. Seems weird to me. Because they're kind of just doing the same thing in VALORANT.
Mate, they won't even let you clip the main broadcast. The only fucking clips on Reddit are from fucking Tarek's stream. Just like, instead of like, so imagine this, right? The machine, the caddy, and the fucking, the 1v4, the incredible moment that we saw at the
ESL clutch against Gambit, last year.
We would not have had that because no one would have been able to clip that. All we would have had is Tarek going, like on a fucking co-stream. And that's what Riot love. Riot love that shit. They love how co-streaming positions their game in a spot of cultural relevance. And I've talked to a few casters about it. It's terrible for casters. There's no way of celebrating what happens on the fucking mainstream. Riot don't want to even really acknowledge it. It's just there to be the backing music for these co-streams.
No, Uber. Like, the thing is that they're doing this right now because they want the numbers to sell franchises. And what they'll say is, they're just watching on co-streams right now, but all those viewers are just going to come over to the new, to the mainstream because now they're hooked on the competition. Like, because they've been reducing the co-streaming on LCS because the narrative was out of control. It was damaging the product. They should get rid of the co-streams on LCS. Like, I'm in favor of doing that because I think it's bad for the ecosystem. I think it's bad for sponsors that are the lifeblood of this industry because the devs won't actually reveal the funds. We don't have media rights and we don't have pay-per-view. So we have to have the sponsors, right?
We definitely think they will shut down co-streams for VALORANT.
Oh, they will.
At some point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you exactly when. I'll tell you exactly when they do that. right? So first of all, they bring all the talent to heel. They've got rid of all the iconoclasts, anyone that might stand up, anyone who might use the U word or anything like that. It's unionization, kids, right? And they're all gone. And then we're going to keep with going down the co-stream route. Why? Because it's actually cheaper per view than building up a really good broadcast team and having a really good broadcast hub. That's like where we're at right now. It's always nickels and dimes. So, but then what's going to happen is all of these agencies that negotiate on behalf of the Shrouds, the Tarics, the whoever, right?
World. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. They're going to turn around and go, shit, we've seen the numbers that you're getting us. Time to up the rates. We're carrying your broadcast. You put out a deck last month that's claiming you're getting 2 million views. 1 million of them are coming from my client. So now we want more money. And that's when Core Stream will get pulled. That's when they're going to go, fuck that.
They can't play influencer money. They not
yes,
for
exactly.
They
They won't pay good caster rates, even though it's actually cheaper than influencer money in the short term. But what they're going to do is they're going to drive those rates down as much as they can, and then just as the influencers start to get what they're worth, because by the way, watching VCT or whatever is a fucking streamer's dream. I hate to break it to you. The average streamer's a lazy bum. If they can just sit there, eat a fucking bowl of ramen, make the occasional grunting noise, and they don't have to do any investment into the show itself or the content they're showing. It's essentially just a react stream, and they get to double dip on the money because they're getting paid to fucking co-stream it, and they get to monetize it through subs and donations on top of that. That is the dream for a streamer. But eventually their agencies will want their cut, they'll want their pound of flesh, and they'll drive the rates up. And that's when Riot will come back to all the broadcasters who are now going to be like, please, we just want to have that relevance. We just want to be involved. Yeah, exactly. And that's when they'll suddenly realize the need for a good broadcast. 100%.
Yes. So anyway, all this stuff in the atmosphere does create a space where, as you see, if you're a talent, you just feel isolated, you're uncertain, you don't know what the future holds, you can't plan for anything. Should put my written down. Basically, the problem is they know if we all got together, there's more of us than them. It's sort of like that movie Ants, if you remember Uber.
Another
strong. There you go, more than the grasshoppers. If the ants got together, you see, it started related in there, so whatever.
I mean, I think where this goes too is like, this is why you see people, even if they end up coming back like Moses did in CS, right? It's like people are very intentionally leaving. Like, and CS is definitely one of the better scenes in terms of payment. Like, CS casters can make more money than any other casters in the English language in the world. Now, before it was kind of brutal because you'd be traveling like 250 days of the year. Like, not everybody wants to or can do that. But in general, the competition between TOs did make for a healthier environment overall. And you see people, Jat left League of Legends. We've seen tons of people leave League of Legends. Papa Smithy went to GM 100 Thieves.
He literally tweeted that he thought casting was a dead profession.
He does think that, by the way. He actually really does believe that if you talk to him. And that's one of the reasons why he wanted to leave. But, and also it's not only just a financial cap on this when you're dealing with a monopoly, there's also just a career cap. Like, if you say like, well, I want to start making this kind of content or like do some more fun stuff and try and be a producer, oftentimes they won't let you do that. I mean, that was definitely
creativity, right?
Like at LEC, they actually empower casters, which is a great thing, which is one of the reasons why they have such good content, probably the best shoulder content of anybody in the world right now, right? And, Duncan, you and I did that with Flashpoint, where we empowered the casters. That's why Flashpoint 2 had all those fucking great skits, and we had the cool hype videos and everything like that. I was producing those hype videos, right? And there is value to that. I was helping produce Rainbow Six shoots last week in Vegas for the new NAL season because they like how I interact with the players, and they like the material I can get out of the players in those circumstances because they just respond better to me. Because I kind of speak their language, right? And I know how to make them comfortable. And
you're making them sound like some sort of tribe of fucking like pygmies.
I mean, they are. They're pro players.
Even speak their language. Look, shoot, shoot, bang, bang, bing, bing. You are. See?
They are like that. We all know pro players are actually like that.
It's so true. Yeah,
they are primitives. Okay, so, but it's these kind of things, and that's why LEC is so good. But for a lot of people, the career development simply just ends, and they just want you to trot you out. You scream into mics now, and you're like, "Can I help out in some other way?" A lot of casters are very motivated.
By the way, I even think there's a segue here, which is this is also why short-term thinking kills you. Because I'll tell you what happened to ESL in particular. Here's why ESL didn't do excellent shoulder content and skits like we're talking until Flashpoint did it. Because since the casters became institutionalized into how this works, of how you're hired and you're on the rate and you're battling this guy and the rate doesn't go up, and then we're haggling over every detail. They're even haggling over how much you travel days and should you have a travel day and you can have the rehearsal off. Because they became like that themselves, they then thought of, unsurprisingly, didn't give any extra leeway to the TO. Like, they're not just going to come in for free and do it. You better pay me to do that shoulder content. But the problem is the TO doesn't see the value in it, and you get to this stalemate where actually, essentially, both parties want it. They want the shoulder content and awesome, like, fucking skits and funny things that engage with the community. The talent want to do it, but the talent have been treated like they've been nickel and dimed so much. They're like, well, I'm not just doing it for nothing. Whereas instead, if you actually have, like, a real cooperation, you have a longer-term deal with someone, you have them on a set amount for over the whole year, you include extra amounts for things like this. Now you can unlock people's creativity. Because, by the way, people like, if it's Overwatch League, someone like Uber, MonTV's on some, these guys want to do it. They want to create awesome extra shit. They want it to be a better product.
And you know, the irony is you can just hire fewer producers as a result, because the talent will just do it.
Well, you know, I'll also add, and I made this point in the article I wrote about it. Again, it comes down to a Riot philosophical view that I don't think they want people who aren't under their direct control or influence to be the ones essentially telling the story or crafting the history of their games, of their teams. You know, because the problem with that is you might let some truth slip into it. And we all know how adverse to that Riot are, you know? Like, if you, for example, if you fucking, you know, let's just say there was a situation where, you know, like TSM, for example. TSM is such an important part of the League of Legends ecosystem. You're not going to be able to tell a fucking story as part of an official Riot broadcast that includes all of the fuckery or bullshit that's gone on behind the scenes. Absolutely not. You're not going to be able to do that. What you're going to have to do is do this very whitewashed version of what happened. You know, TSM had difficulties internally, but the team galvanized and rallied and all this shit. And it's like, it doesn't bear any, you know, sort of, it's not reality. And they don't want that. They don't want people coming in producing content that's authentic. Everyone uses the authentic and credibility buzzwords in esports, but when it actually comes to enacting that, and it shows the downside to our very broken, corrupt, and shitty industry, then people are really like, whoa, this might drive a sponsor away. But it's the reality of what happened, so it doesn't matter. So they don't want people telling the stories they think that only they themselves should be allowed to tell.
Yeah, I mean, they're very nervous about losing control of the narrative at any point, I think. And this actually happened. You see this in a fair bit of their content. I don't like. I think Riot prefer to let their universe do the talking than let like their talent do the talking. Like, you don't see voiced over recaps. Like, you don't see their voices appearing in the game or anything like that. Like, they're not interested in that at all. And I think that's going to be the same for all of their products. They really would rather leverage their universe, I think, as much as they possibly can. So
I mean, that's proven. They put KDA music videos in front of the most important League of Legends game of the year instead of actually telling the story of the teams and how they got there.
Yes,
it's why in some ways I think it's actually genius that they made Valorant have the MOBA elements, because the problem they would have had in CSGO is it's about the players, because every fucking character in the game is identical. Whereas in their game now, they get to do exactly what they do in League. It ain't about the fact that it's like this player. It's the Sova, though. It's all about the agent and the character. Like, they always try to make it that the game is more important, even though everyone must understand this principle, if I put it in sporting terms. Which is more important to the amazing Barcelona-Real Madrid match? The football and the nets and the pitch, or fucking, like, Lionel Messi and Ronaldo? We all know the answer to that one, but the joke in League of Legends and Valorant is they think there's a debate. They think the debate is maybe you aren't watching because it's fucking Scream. You're watching because it's Jet. It's like, it's the other way around, you idiot, if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, that's why it was so interesting to work with OGN, because like OGN definitely got that because they had 20 years of experience in StarCraft with no help from Blizzard about star building players and making sure that the players' faces were always obvious, that the players were the superstars, that the casters were also the superstars in a lot of situations, right? I mean, you can tell they've had very long-term deals with most of the casters on the Korean side of things, decades you know, in certain cases across games.
Yes.
Like
they actually did the opposite.
They value
OG,
Caster
right?
Jun so much that he was
Yes.
now he works for Riot, right, on a contract, but he basically cast 20 years at almost 20 years, 15, 20 years at OGN, right? There was that stability, and I think that can bridge us into this next, you know, the next topic, which is that a lot of the reason people are leaving is because this scene lacks stability, even in the best possible cases. Like, you're lucky to get a 2-year deal. And, you know,
by the way, I've got an aside I want to add in here as well, because as someone who now, I know barely anything about VALORANT. I don't pretend to watch the game. It was never a game I was interested in. I'm doing a show, though, because specifically, like I've done in the past case, I wanted to try and actually help platform someone else's work. And spoiler, if they're good, you get to learn the game through talking to them. It's like a way to sort of boost your skills up. It's perfect. If you
who's Valoranting? Yep.
There you go. So, it's basically a free way to get trained on the job. But they think that you're helping them out. It's perfect. Right? So, they don't exploiting them. Yeah, exactly. I know. All right, Mark, they're all they should be thankful to be on my show.
It was me all along.
Basically, the point I was going to make was this, though. I also think VALORANT is one of the least appropriate games to be putting talent in this position. Because if you are anyone except the host, I tell you right now, VALORANT is a full-time game. You cannot do it on the side. It has way more. It has the information burden of League of Legends, and then you have to know all the teams and players like CSGO simultaneously, and this is the craziest part I don't think people understand, then it has all the maps as well, so the amount of permutations and things are insane. This isn't like Overwatch. I'd played Overwatch a bit, I used to watch it for fun because Monty worked in the league. I could just watch that casually and I could talk like I knew 80% of the game. In VALORANT, like, you can't just be doing it for 1 month, which means, by the way, you had to have spent the last 1.5 years working on it to be good for this month, and then go, I'm not getting the gig in the next 2 months. Fuck, well, I mean, it's like we said about the day rate thing. It's like, there's nothing else I can go and do that justifies the 2 years of working on the game I just did. It's not like I have another game like this I can just switch over to. If I go and do PUBG or something, it's a totally different game. I have to have my own skill set built up there. So it's also, like we say, if they're the only game in town, like, you're essentially just playing God with people's careers in like an unnecessary manner in this case. Because like this is why, to bring it back to Sean Gares and DDK, I've no doubt that they are jaded. They put 2 years of their life into this game, and it's not that they're not number one. They're not even fucking hired.
They're not even invited.
Not even hired, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and this game is so VALORANT is unique in that it's actually a color caster's opportunity to really just take over the show, because the flow of information is one of the most important parts of this game, and it's never talked about. And it's not apparent. It's based on assumptions and how people.
Well, it's also a bunch of the scouting and shit happens off camera, and like you have to know like where the cipher cams are, where the Sova arrows are, and like so it's problematic, and I think probably is not amazing for viewership, because CSGO is much more obvious about what's going on with like flashbangs and smokes and utility and everything like that. Yeah. But it is very you are basically keeping a checklist in your head in VALORANT about who sees what at any given time, or who could have seen what,
or what's being implied by someone.
Sean was very good.
They both are. Dan's basically a color caster. He is one of the most color leaning play-by-play commentators ever. That's why he worked with Bardolph. All these creatures, let's blow the roof off this bitch. You know, Dan is fucking there like explaining shit. Like, those guys could both be. I'm telling you, if Dan ever comes back to VALORANT, I'm taking him. He's giving me my color caster quite happily. But what's so mental about this is that this whole discussion about the ceiling or the difficulty in transitioning out of a caster position, or the difficulty in just getting some more ownership and stake in the product. And you're so often kept at arm's length when you as a caster want to do that. I've seen it everywhere. I see it in Overwatch and VALORANT and everything like that. And it causes this situation where, this is why I tweeted this, guys. It's like, it's weird that like people do casting, but it's never the end goal. Like, it's always just, people always thinking about what they doing, like transitioning into some fucking pen pushing role off screen or whatever. So if you actually just really like casting, you're fucked, mate, because it's just a halfway house on the way to a quote unquote real job. And it's not even a money issue. I mean, the money could be better for sure, but it's the stability is the biggest fucking problem. Yes. I have a kid. Sean has 2 kids. Like,
I have a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sorry.
Which is interesting. I just saw you referred to as an incel the other day, Monty, in the comment section on our last episode of this. So go check out that fucking psycho comment.
Unlucky, really. But yeah, like, so we don't have the time to play Bush League or play these fucking games. But then when, like, okay, some casters don't want to cast.
And by the way, Mitch, hold on. We're not making unreasonable demands. We just want a middle-class lifestyle where we can cast and then have kids with some level of stability. It's a pretty fucking
These
normal
fuckers want me to stay in California. They're not letting me, like, when I do the Overwatch League, they say, you kind of need to be in California, right? Especially in the first couple of seasons. So, okay, fair enough. I mean, poverty lines are 80 grand a year here. So let's just fucking start right there. And I tell you, they had troubles offering casters that not in recency, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't need to be fucking rich. I don't need to drive a Bugatti. I just what the fuck? I just need the off-camera hours to be compensated to the same degree as or at least to some degree. And that's why Matt, Mr. X, Matt Morello, is now working on the product side of Overwatch League. He's like, I don't know, like associate director of Overwatch League product or something like that. Because maybe he doesn't have aspirations of casting in the longer term. But I'm only 30. Like, I wouldn't mind casting for a few more years. But there's a world where, like, I might have to take some pen pushing job, and like my talent is working in talent development. So I'd be one of those people that would be able to empower talent and be able to tell people like Blizzard to pay them more. The problem is that I'd have to stop casting because I'm on record so often about being like, you can't be choosing talent and you can't be selecting and vetting them and also casting. This is a conflict of interest.
But in Overwatch League, it's important to note that you can be doing those things if you're dating a caster. That was perfectly acceptable.
Oh, I mean, yeah, and that conflict of, I mean,
process of elimination, fans. Think
massive conflict of interest.
Answers on a postcard.
Yeah, and that was a big problem, right? To be fair, not an issue right now, but the effects of that are persistent. So I want to point that out, and it was a huge problem. For example, to be clear, I was dating a producer. First thing I did was go to the bosses and go, this is happening. Like, do we need to change roles here? Does something need to happen? You know what I mean? Like, we sort of had to make that clear. She didn't make any actually doesn't make any decisions about whether I cast or not. But all I'm saying is that, like, I don't want as a caster to have to be forced to take a pen pushing job and then to lift other people up when I'm not done. I'm not fucking done yet. But people like Dan and Sean weren't done either. They just didn't have a fucking choice.
And think about this, guys. Like, think about what you lose, because now we're in a world where, Counter-Strike Esports has been going strong for 20 years. If we lose a Counter-Strike caster because they're being asked to, they just can't make a living, basically, and like have a family and like even a somewhat normal lifestyle, right? Then we just lose history. Like, when I left Korean League of Legends, even though many people, Papa Smithy is a great caster, knew all of the, all the history, there's still a difference between being there day in and day out and casting those games. And you lose something when somebody leaves one of those positions, especially casters who have been there for a very long time. And if all signs are pointing to another 20 years of CS, guys, doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. It's basically like the perfect game. And if we force people out of CS, we just lose competitive history, and we lose the interest of the game, and we lose the legacy of the game.
I'll add,
fucking depressing.
Yeah, I'll add to this, though. I mean, it's not just developers and sort of economic realities that contribute to this. Of course, as everything in esports, the fans. You've always got to get a dig in at the fans, because they are their own worst enemies. And what I find in a lot of esports scenes is it's very trend heavy. It's very popularity based. Like, if I have to, so for example, Semler, people like you commentate so much and people hear your voice so much, because it's not like a sports model where you are exclusive to one broadcast and you will do like one game a week maximum during a season. It's like you do fucking 10 games a fucking,
it's like you do a decade in a year, isn't it, of sports?
Yeah, exactly. And then people start noticing your like linguistic crutches or quirks or phraseologies or anecdotes you tell, because obviously you've got to cater to a potential new broadcaster, a new viewer rather, on the broadcast, but like someone's heard it before, and so obviously like they just turn on you immediately, and they did that with Semler. Essentially drove him out of the scene. He goes to Overwatch, and then people start going, bloody hell, I miss Semler. Shame he went to Overwatch. He comes back, and then they go, look at this traitor slithering back from Overwatch. Fuck him. Yeah, he's only here for the money. It's like, motherfuckers, you cannot win. And so the problem you've got is, like, it's why I always say it's a young person's game, because you have to be up on sort of all of the, like, stupid social media Zoomer fucking trends, and you have to pander to that audience, and you don't get to reach the point a lot of the great sports commentators do, where you have gravitas and you get to age gracefully and all that stuff. Basically, as soon as you get grey hair in your beard, you got to get the fuck off camera. You know, it's that's about where we're at as an industry. It's just not very mature, and the fan base isn't very mature. Plus, we have a huge churn of fans in general. There are some people who won't even know. Like, for example, they watch League of Legends, Monty. They'll never know you casted it. Do you know what I mean? It's fucking mental. So there is an inherent problem in the maturity levels on the industry because of, you know, what the product is.
By the way, I have a take as well, which is this is also why this approach, not only, think about it, not only are you essentially skimming the best talent off the top of the industry to go elsewhere, so you're never having your best people. Like the joke is, Monty should be like a permanent fixture on League of Legends if they played the cards like Papa Smithy. Like they would have, by the way, the most next level game because they're now 10 years deep. So they would have people who were there from the beginning and still are the best. And they'd have all the other talent as well. Whereas instead, right, when you skim off the top like that, and it's super hard to go from nothing to in the casting gigs, like in League of Legends, now they've got sort of like leagues below and national leagues. You used to only have LCS. Unless you could jump from nothing to LCS, you can't make it.
And
it
Captain
also
Flowers
just
is like the only guy who did that, by the way.
It just makes it so you have a non-existent pipeline of talent. And the reason why I can tell you this is I'll give you an example in CSGO. So in CSGO, I used to be the analyst for ESL. Has anyone seen who ESL, including DreamHack, has hired in the last year or so? They've hired Maui Snake, someone I brought onto Flashpoint, never worked any events before. They've hired Alan Hender, someone I brought onto Flashpoint, never worked any events before. They just hired Paladin, who was a guy who did 2 fucking single video episodes on my talk show and had 300 YouTube subs. I personally sent an email to the person we all know works at ESL who hires. They hired him as well. Why am I their talent development thing?
I mean,
I'm supposed to be the
Potter
guy
on the Valorant broadcast, dude.
Yeah, again, essentially, I've brought up and scouted the next generation of talent, and I'm now giving them to the fucking
These
machine.
people don't exist at any of these companies.
No, there's no one like me. It's my point. Like, there's no one. Like, the joke is, I should be the guy hiring at ESL. Not that I want a job.
Quickshot does that. Like, to be fair,
you need someone like that. Yeah, but the point is, in CS:GO, we don't have that, mate.
Right.
You know, and the problem is, as well as this, right? When they make this kind of environment, they also, it's like teams, you know, when teams get on top, the only time they'll change the way they play is when they've lost enough. Otherwise, they just think you can iterate the same blueprint over and over again. I'm on top, so how would I change? That's also the other problem. When the top talent gets skimmed off, does ESL and the other TOs go out and find these guys that are out there that I've found? No. What they do is they just go, who's next on the list? And if next on the list is the guy who used to be the 8th best caster, congrats, you're now the 5th best. Welcome on in. And you actually end up with a very stale scene. It's like you recycle, but not even the good talents. You sort of recycle the middle people, where I'm sorry if you're watching, you all fucking know who you are. You should be lucky you even do the bloody event. But you just end up with people who are happy to be there. That's the main defining quality. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to ask for too much. At the moment, maybe they're 23, and this is their sort of like sabbatical years in a career, as it were, where they can throw away a few years, cast in a game for fun and the experience. But that's not professional at that point in time. Like, you're trying to run the world championship with your game. You're trying to tell me this is a sport and that's going to be bigger than the NFL. But then you're treating it like it's an amateur hour hobbyist shit, where the guy, it's like, at this point, he's not, but he may as well, you know, be packing his own lunch to come to the event or something. Like, that's a mismatch. So the reason I have a problem with that is, how dare those TOs then turn around and go to the sponsors and pretend they are selling the Olympics or the NFL, etc. And then you look at the talent, it's like the difference is just, it's insane. And we're never going to be at their level if these problems exist, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think what attaches people to sports is the stories and the narratives that you can create around it. That's what the most compelling thing is, right?
And then the worst part as well, by the way, is when one of these guys comes up and they start to get good, like their skills get good. If they're in a game like Valorant or League of Legends, I feel like I'm in that fucking movie The Road, where that guy's just trying to navigate his son through like a nightmare post-apocalyptic world with all cannibals and shit. Like, because I'm trying to tell them, like, look, now, I know you've been working really hard on all the casting and that, but stay away from all the strangers. Watch out for the guy who's trying to ask you. He's not really asking for feedback. Just smile and say it, nod, say that it was all good. No, I know you think the game's slightly not balanced, but don't say that. Don't say that. It's like, I feel like I'm fucking programming them now. Like, what the fuck? Like, because you actually feel, no joke, and I'll tie this back into this exact case, like I said. I won't say specifically for these 2 individuals, but there were people in Valorant who have been blackballed and blacklisted and will not be hired again. And I tried to tell these people, I know it's fucked up, but if you're going to go into the game, you can't have an opinion about that. Like, I told them, literally, if you have any complaints, even though it sounds mad, treat it like you were someone leaking a really important story. You're going to have to contact me, Richard and Monty. That's the only way you can get this this info out there. If you see it on your account, you are done. And they all thought like, because here's the problem. When you have someone who, in my opinion, is in like the toxic end of an abusive relationship, one of the things they always do, it's part of being abusive, is you make the other person accept that you're not abusing them. That actually this is totally fine, and maybe like, their behavior even is why you do it. So the worst thing is people become like, they get Stockholm syndrome, and they themselves think, well, why would they ban me though? I haven't said anything unreasonable though. It's like, again, I told you, they're the unreasonable one. They're the one who have a certain thing. And it's not based on what us normal people think is unreasonable. They have a different metric. They might be upset, like I said, that you criticize something minor about the game balance. Maybe for all you know, that guy actually has a really, he just thinks, how dare you criticize the game or something? Your job is to promote the game. There's all these pitfalls that like, I feel like it's unfair. Like I've seen now people like DDK and Sean Gares. These were the most reasonable of the tier 1
They're
talents
so
I've
nice.
ever seen.
Yeah,
And
that's the whole thing. If this can,
fire.
guys,
Exactly.
if you are a caster,
Exactly.
you haven't figured it out. Like, sure, I rock the
They're
boat publicly.
on this one, absolutely.
I fight. Like, I get in there and scrap with billion-dollar companies. Like, there's reasons why companies don't like me. You know what I mean? And I acknowledge those reasons. That's who I am, because I'm not going to I refuse to get bent over a barrel. I refuse to play their games. I refuse not to reveal the fucked up shit that they're doing. If this can happen to Sean Gares and DDK, like, that's why it was so shocking to people in this industry, other casters, is because they are the last people who are going to rock the boat. They are
very powerful message to the rest of them as well, isn't it?
That's
DDK is so nice to me. I thought he was taking the piss when I first met him. He was just so fucking nice. I'm like, a human being cannot actually be wired up this way. And he just fucking was.
These are people who
gets on the way out the door after explaining essentially that they've sort of fucked him over and pushed him out was sort of like, and be sure though, fans, don't blame Riot Games though. It's like, that's the most depressing part to me, mate. Not even getting fucked over. It's like, dude, they got his mind. His mind's just locked up in a fucking prison cell back there in the jar.
Well, it's also like the demands aren't outrageous, guys. Like, we're just sitting there like, please, can I lock in a middle class lifestyle for 2 years? Please, will you just let me do that, even though I have to spend months away from home every year going to these international events? Yeah, it's not egregious what people are asking for. We're not talking about, nobody's got $1 million contract or anything even close to that, guys. Not anywhere close, right? It's like, and when you're forced to live in places like Los Angeles, like, you just have to make a certain amount of money to like have a small house, right? So,
I mean, I'm not buying a house anytime soon. It's just not happening. I'm 30. I've been working as a cast for 10 years. You love
avocado on toast, 2 of them every morning.
Yeah.
I don't throw money. I'm pretty frugal. I really am, especially with a kid and stuff like that. But it's not reasonable. We're just happening.
The VALORANT casters are just like, please, can I make 1/100th of the amount of money that Tarek makes for co-streaming the thing that I'm casting? It's fucking pathetic, guys. It's so sad.
There's some mad stories like about sort of like people having to do like fucked up forced like house shares, people sleeping in vans. Like, people don't fucking realize at all, like, especially in that Californian esports hub, what you have to give up to kind of make it. It's very much like entertainment industry type stuff, where it's like you hear these stories about how people like, I think it was like fucking Jim Carrey when he first went out to Hollywood, like literally lived in the back of his car and was just doing rehearsals all the time. It's like, that's what's going on. But here's the difference: these people are meant to have made it.
Yes, exactly. That's the point.
If Jim Carrey still lived in his fucking car.
If Jim Carrey still lived in his car, exactly.
Yeah, look, I'll be the first to say, entertainment's a rough and competitive industry. The lower levels are always going to be like that, right? That's just how it works. But if you are in tier 1, I think you should be able to, because everyone's always touting, oh, we have so much viewership. Look at this. And it's like, all these people at the companies make more money than you, who are producers or who are full-time employees, who are the directors of this game, and you're the one who's expected to be on broadcast. And really, the expectation is, it goes beyond that, guys, because we're the ones promoting the broadcast on social media. We're the ones creating the content. For the first 2 years on Overwatch, I had the biggest show with Thorin about Overwatch that was independently made, that Blizzard didn't pay either of us for. That was just a fucking bonus that you got to entertain the hardcore fans, right? That was my time on Overwatch League, right? So you're getting all of this extra stuff, and we don't get paid anything more for that. That's not seen as valuable to create additional content most of the time. I think some people like Shocks have like translated their social media success very well, you know, into being able to potentially like get, you know, some other gigs like the one she's doing right now for Valorant, right? Where there is that she has enough of a footprint and has done a good job that there is this possibility. But if you just want to be a person who spends all your time grinding tape as a color commentator and you are an excellent fucking color commentator, it's like, it's not enough. You know, it's not enough. If you're not broadening your horizons, if you're not doing this other shit, you're putting your career at risk, frankly. Like by focusing, the weird thing is by focusing on the product and your job, you are actually worse at your job and more likely to experience instability.
Yes,
which is
Here's what I'm
you compromise your
insane.
leverage. The only way you increase your leverage is by courting outside like games and doing other things. Your loyalty actually has the opposite effect.
Glad you brought that up because, you know, this is also worth talking. Here's the big negotiating, you know, thing that's going on at the moment as well. And I know we've been on for 2 hours already. Might be something that we get a little bit of time to explore. I know Mitch might have some insight into this. And that is that, you know, now what they're doing is they're demanding game exclusivity in a lot of this, but they're not paying you for that exclusivity.
No, you get day rate still.
Yeah. So what happens is, so like I talked about this prior to, you know, the Brennan sideshow announcement. And that one of the things that was going on over at the Overwatch League is they're saying to people, no, we don't want you to go and double dip and do Valorant on, you know, on our off weeks or do a Valorant event. We don't like that. We don't think it's good optics. We want you to be exclusive. We're putting that in the contract. And basically like, okay, so what do I get for that? You actually get the same day rate you were getting for not agreeing to that previously. So, and it's starting to come down the pipe the other way, where obviously Riot Games don't want Valorant casters, necessarily the best ones, doing other FPS titles as well. Anything that's going to have any kind of overlap.
Think about how many of them currently, because of this exact scenario we're talking about, have to work in PUBG and Rainbow Six and every other fucking game.
Exactly.
I need some of them for like Rocket League or something.
So what they do is they make a demand of exclusivity, but they don't reward you for that. And then they cut rates, meaning you need to court outsiders. By the way, as Mitch says, it does also give you more leverage if you can be proficient in multiple games. But then, of course, that is going to put you on the outs with almost any of these companies. And it's a new way that developers are going to work together in lockstep to do these fucked up fealty tests. So I just want to get that.
And not only that, but
one other thing just to add is another reason, by the way, that's also fucked up is, think about what we're describing about pushing rates down. When your rate gets pushed down, one of the few graces in this industry is you can go to some other league that's doing a white label event for some shit game you don't care about and get paid the proper money you need to. You can actually supplement your income, as, by the way, some of the people, by the way, the joke was, that was also the original scam, how they had people like Uber, they'd just make him go do that, maybe for nothing extra, and he'd just be doing those games. But in the modern day, that is freelance, how you make money in the games where they fucking crush your rate.
Yeah. And not only that, but when you look at this, like if you were to agree to exclusivity, then you have to take garbage rates, which means you're not getting people who have established credentials as casters. You're really not even getting potential good up and comers, because if you literally have any other skill, you have to be a fucking psycho to take, you know, guaranteed like 2 tournaments, because Riot won't give you any more Valorant events. They won't guarantee you, you know, a year's worth of stuff right now in order to be a commentator. So you're not getting the best people, like objectively. Like if you're experienced, you're not going to go there, unless you're Sean and DDK and you get bamboozled by Riot, but that's over now, right? And if there's somebody who has like a broader skill set or comes from a professional background, they're not going to sign up for this garbage. Like, it's not worth the price to the
what do you think
vast
OJ
majority
would
of
do if he
people.
fucking saw this shit get waved in his face? You think he'd just fucking laugh and piss on it?
Yeah. So it's like, you're not getting people who have options. You're getting like dregs, basically.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Another thing that make you jaded as fuck as well, if you are one of these people who knows the inside of the company and the rates and what they claim their budgets are. It's when you find out. So let's imagine hypothetically you were an ESL caster and you went to an event in Australia and you went there and your rates were all pushed down and you'd even give them a little discount. And then you find out they'd fly out some female CSGO player and pay her 20k to play a show match for half an hour or something. Then similarly, you might be someone where, sorry, for next year, I don't know about the budget. Don't worry about that. We just paid 200k to this shit rapper to do the opening set. Like, those are the things where it's like, who is managing these budgets? Like, that's almost like you're pissing in my face after I've had my rate slashed, you know. Like, I understand things cost different amounts, but again, if we talk about what adds to the broadcast, is it really having that fucking show match was the main thing? But that just shows you how when they're dealing with a different client, because for that show match they're dealing with some sponsor probably, all of a sudden the fucking checkbook's open, isn't it? Suddenly they feel like they can pay for that.
Here's a great example, Thorin. At Overwatch League, you know, they paid DJ Khaled to do that garbage, and they paid a lot of money for that. Less than $1 million, but a significant sum of money.
Not by much, yeah.
And then they came back after that season and tried to cut caster rates, and they could have given us all significant raises with that money instead, because they thought DJ
Khaled come out and go, "We want you to sign another one."
We fucked them. We fucked them in that off-season.
They did not succeed.
Fuck off with that. I'm not letting that stand. Cut that from the VOD, Monty. That's outrageous.
It's better than his performance.
Yeah, true. Fair enough. I mean, it was worse than CSGO, just to put it in context. At least DJ Khaled getting paid more than you. At the fucking Face It major in London, a literal chicken, was getting a higher day rate than some of the on-air talent. That is no joke.
You know where they have the chicken?
It was called fucking 2 Chains or something, the chicken.
It's because it was higher than the betting company, to be fair. But yeah, it was getting more day rate than to hire it cost more than one of the talent was getting paid for some of the games. Yeah,
that is not a joke.
Just blindly through instinct pecking at the things. That was winning more, getting more money than someone who had to know about like CS:GO and all that. I know it's mental, isn't it? It's mental.
And by the way, guys, at that same event, Uber and I were on ABC, one of the biggest broadcasting networks in America. We were on national television, and they tried to cut our rates after hiring DJ Khaled. They didn't succeed in cutting our rates, right? But this is what we have to deal with, guys.
Because we block negotiated. It didn't last forever, because you better believe it put some targets on backs, but we fucked them up in that year. But you know what we did then? Is one of the guys we used to negotiate against, he went and decided to be an agent. So I turned him on them the next year and the next year.
That's
nice.
I
just keep bending them the fuck over, because he knows their tricks, and now I do too.
Exactly.
So. But you can't be friendly with these fucks. Oh, I've been there with 4 years. I think there'd be a sense of you think there'd be a sense of loyalty? No. Because I've seen it every time. They've had like guys like Monty, Dar, Bren Sideshow. You know, every year it's like, oh, you know, December 31st, great job, guys. Our AMA is incredible. Our KPIs are just fucking through the roof. January 1, look, guys, it's a little tight out there. Budget's just not where they were last year, and just want to set you expectations.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm thinking there, I'm like, because who the fuck's setting these budgets? Like, I still don't know who this person is. It's 3 fucking gerbils in a fucking waistcoat in a fucking top hat. Who is doing this? And because this is what Californian organizations do. When you're trying to find out who does something, they just close ranks, don't they? Like Moses already let everyone through, and then you're fucking trying to catch up to the rest of them on Exodus.
Drowning in the Red Sea.
You know, and just people are just diving in front of you. And I'm like, who did this? And no one will tell you. Fucking Californian, corporations, they just block for each other and pass the buck and block and pass, and you never ever get through there. It's just a quagmire. It's insane. I'd love to know who set these fucked up budgets. And I suspect they're probably not even here, because they're there 1 year and gone next. That's what the turnover's like, especially to company like Activision Blizzard, all the bullshit going on there.
Oh, those people just get promoted into weird other positions a lot of the time.
Yeah, I see people failing upwards. Like, as soon as you get from the talent level to the corporate level, it's
all of esports.
Yeah, in gravity and dirt, and you just fucking...
Here's the other thing I find I think this is genuinely shameless. I know I've mentioned it on a past Four Horsemen episode, but it's the perfect segue to just say it right now as well. When that company negotiates with you to try and push you down from the amount they promised you would be on, and I'm sure in the case of Monty, I bet they were even making like, oh, in the future, maybe you'll be even better deals, and you'll have an expanded role, and you'll be a part of blah, 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 blah. When you actually get fucked over, they bend you over the barrel and try and push your rate down. When they don't get you because you say no, they will spin it as the Overwatch League did, that they chose not to have you, and that they've got better talent, and that the next guy coming in, he's actually better than Monty. And you know what? This year, what we decided to do was we went a different direction. Meanwhile, they're liars, and they want to hire all the same people just for less. So they'll also essentially like fucking wreck you on the way out the door as well. They won't even sort of give you the good grace of like, he chose not to work with us. Like, they have to sort of spin that in their favor too.
Yep.
Not to mention as well, another big favorite of Riot is obviously, if for any reason, and I won't name names, although I always hope one day they're going to come out and tell this story. But, you know, for example, like something as just benign as like, we had a disagreement over day rates. That suddenly gets spun into like rumors that maybe you're lazy or maybe you're a drug addict or, you know, whatever it is. And they will just go and spread that to other potential developers on that Silicon Valley circuit, that Silicon Valley pipeline that's been coming into esports. And now suddenly you're persona non grata in multiple esports. And that's another thing Riot Games do. They use their fucking web of influence to fuck you out of ever. You know, they'll like I said, they've stopped me doing a StarCraft event. You know what I mean? It's like they are
people half the time. They just get fucking recycled between these companies anyway.
Yeah, it's
You
fucking,
can never get away
it's
from it.
diabolical, man. It really is.
I will say that fortunately in the broader esports ecosystem, Riot people have a pretty bad reputation, and they don't generally many of them have not been able to escape Riot. You'll notice that they tend to just stay there and not get hired by outside esports companies. So it's not as bad as it could be, for sure. There is like a containment structure within the industry. Like fortunately a lot of
carry the mark of Cain.
a lot of the industry has noticed that Riot Esports is like Chernobyl. We've kind of just put a concrete tomb around them. So the radiation is more or less contained, I will say. So any other thoughts, any final topics that we want to address here? I know it's been pretty depressing, but I think it's been a long time coming in terms of discussing this. And, you know, Sean and DDK leaving was just so crazy that this was a good catalyst for the topic.
We're not under any impression this will like change the scene and Riot will listen to what. I actually think the most important people who could watch this VOD isn't even fans, it's actually other talent. If you're coming into Valorant and you don't know the things we're talking about right now, this could literally not only save you hundreds of thousands in lost revenue, but actually might help you navigate this fucking minefield. Because as I say, it's the worst thing about it is not only do you have to be very careful, but it's like the rules are ever changing as well, and what's expected of you is changing. So like, God bless anyone who wants to go in that space, but like, it's gonna be fucking hard, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, as a currently active caster, this only hurts my prospects in the future, and I only do it because I know that I can turn around and fuck people if they try and, you know, like limit my opportunities as a result of this. I've just been lucky, you know, benefit from the experience and a lot of time the guidance from the people in this call that I've gotten myself to a point where I'm a little harder to get rid of. And I've, you know, and that's the only fucking reason why I can come and say this while I'm still trying to be a caster. So if you're a current caster and you don't listen, then you are fucking Joe Blow from down the road. And I don't want to know about you. And you are gonna propagate this now amongst other talent. You know what I mean? Like, this is essential viewing, I think, for anyone who's trying to make as a caster.
And you guys, to Uber's point, you guys are never going to see this promoted by all your favorite casters. But just like every other episode of Four Horsemen, guys, I'm going to get a gazillion DMs on Twitter and Discord of people being like, thank you for talking about this, right? And they're never going to be able to post it on their own social media. You know, if you don't believe the developers are even watching like what these people are using Twitter likes on, you're wrong about that. They definitely are. So you're not going to see that interaction. But this is one of the only places that people can come, and like, definitely shout out to Uber, who, you know, is contracted by a developer for coming in and talking about this show, because no one ever actually goes to bat for the casters, right? You see people get mad when they hear, oh, the devs are paying, you know, low rates to their employees. Well, talk about, like, for once, have some sympathy for us who have dedicated our lives to these titles and are just treated like shit a lot of the time, or not even allowed the dignity of a multi-year contract, not even allowed to like have families or any kind of stability as long as we want to be casters, and are basically chased away from our passions into other parts of the esports industry because it's not, we don't have growth, and we don't even have a stable economic situation.
Said this many times as well, you know, like, so some of the things to consider. A lot of your favorite broadcasters build up these products, right? Like, I think about how I used to do mates rates for fucking DreamHack of all people.
Exactly,
right? Used to literally slash my rates as low as I could feasibly do it because I wanted to help this company grow. And what do you think happened when they get sold to MTG? Do you think any of us who did that got any of that money, even just a nice little bonus, or even just a pat on the back and say thank you, a care package, even an acknowledgement we had helped make their brand essentially purchasable? No, absolutely not. In fact, DreamHack, first opportunity when it came down to a clash between popular entities, i.e. a Twitch-owned Dota team managed by some fucking deranged lunatic and a popular Swedish player, or me, who had worked all of their events as a host, even done Heroes of the Storm events. I mean, how little self-esteem can a person have, right?
Lot of thanks.
Yeah, oh, there we go. My sympathies. You know, you win, right? But you know what I mean? And it's like, do we get anything for that? Absolutely fucking not. And as Monty says, we're very often driven out as soon as we ever start trying to professionalize the industry and make it a much, much better place. And it's just weird because in a space where everyone acknowledges that things like crunch is bad in the games development industry and everyone's trying to push that out, and they're even down on their favorite companies that make their favorite games for treating their staff this way. No one talks about crunch in the esports industry. No one talks about crunch on a broadcast. How many days have we done, Duncan, that have run 14, 16, 18 hours back to back with no sleep? Like I said, Cluj-Napoca, where there was nearly a walkout, very nearly. We had to sort of negotiate. No, not even drinking water provided at an event when we were working 16-hour days and getting 4 hours sleep a night.
In a country where you can't even drink tap water either, by the way. It wasn't even like we were being divas.
Yeah, so you know, so it was just absolutely ridiculous. And so, you know, like when people say what commentators are asking for isn't unreasonable, I don't think you realize just how bad a lot of these people have it, even the top names in their field. And this is one area the industry's going to have to fucking level up in. But it's going to have to come from the casters. They're going to have to do something about it, because if you watch a show like this and you agree with it and you don't say anything about it because you want to be in bed with Riot, just know what that bed is like.
Yeah, this is why I tweeted that you know, now that you've seen this, casters in Valorant, like, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for you anymore. Like, you should know exactly what you're getting, and what you're getting is when it franchises, they'll crush your rates. They will do the same shit.
You won't get hired anywhere. You'll be out.
Just go talk to some League of Legends casters, guys. It's not hard.
Just
talk to me. I'll tell you about it.
Just talk to each other. I mean, Valorant casters are really not good at it, and you guys need to start doing it. Don't fucking talk to me. I don't want you coming and be like, so what is the industry standard rate? You should fucking know that. Go and talk to your peers and try and understand like what is actually going on. I don't want you fucking to DM me. I'm not a Valorant caster. All right, talk to each other.
And also, take some responsibility. Like when it was successful to block negotiate a lot of the time in League of Legends, you know, but we had leverage because all of us were contracted with OGN, and that job was safe because OGN loved us, right? And they treated us pretty well overall. And so when you're talking with Riot, like, if you guys want stability, you guys should be getting together. It is baffling to me how pathetic it is that the LoL casters who've worked for Riot, some of these people for almost or over 10 years at this point in time. LCS is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. These guys still have not been able to get together and effectively block negotiate. A lot of this is on you at a certain point in time. You have to take the power and change your own fucking life, right?
One thing I'm really sick of as well, because it ties into this comment here, it's like when fans defend the behavior of the TO because they say things like, but how much does it really matter if it is DDK or someone else? You know, they're just defending their bottom line. Like, they have to do what makes business sense for them. No, the whole reason that we made this industry isn't to make money, you idiots. Otherwise, it never would exist, because it never could make money. We did it because the games are awesome. We wanted to showcase the games as well as we can and then show these amazing narratives and stories and competition. And along the way, we need to make money to do that, of course. That is a side consideration, though. It is not the main goal. And the reason why that tilts me is there's this really, I understand that the most casual fan, by definition, can't really know the skill set of a talent on camera. He can't really know the difference between a 10 out of 10 caster and a 7 and a 0.5 out of 10 caster. To him, if he likes them, they're all good. And if he doesn't like them, even the 10 out of 10 caster's shit and doesn't know anything about the game. That's just the way fans are. But the problem is, between there are people like the TOs who should have a better sense. There are people who should be hiring talent, who should know how good people are. And I'm sick of this idea that, the reason why you can put me, I'll use myself in this case, against a guy who has 0 years of talent experience doing talent is because you know, maybe he can speak well, people think he's all right. No, there's a difference. the quality of what you bring to the table is going to be reflected in the broadcast. I'll give you a CS:GO example if people want a case. So in the online era, we had all these young players and inexperienced players, people who'd never been tier 1 pros, come into tier 1, and on online they were all competing just like anyone else, and they looked just as good. And then we went to LANs, and that you found that people like Carrigan, by the way, solid like 15 years deep in the game at this point in time, he was running circles around these guys. He really was like the cliche of they were playing checkers and he was playing chess, because there's like the experience as well as the raw performance he brings to the table matters. Yeah. So to me, that's just why I tie it back to what Monty says earlier. That's why you can't lose MonteCristo and Papa Smithy and these people from League of Legends, because even if the next guy is identically as good as Monty, he can't possibly have lived the game like they did in that way. Now, here's the good news. As long as he stays in the game, when he gets his 3 or 4 years in, he can now be Monty. But he can't be tomorrow. He can't just replace him and go, well, saved €100 on that. You're actually the fool then. Because unless you're just doing this to sell a burger, surely it's your passion project too. Surely this is what you want to be remembered. This is your magnum opus, is to make an LCS, is to make Overwatch League, etc. So surely you want it to be the best quality and not at the end go, why did you actually choose that guy? Wasn't as good? I've saved like $100 a month. Like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. You gave up everything for the $100, you moron. That's all I have to say.
Meanwhile, these people are like, does this person in the corporation, they're like, does this person have the proper 10 years of experience to fill this director or manager role? And it's like, they're like, well, that comes with more money. It's like, they don't get that. Like, there are very few people in management or hiring positions at these companies who have any kind of experience with talent whatsoever, even not in esports, right?
No, I mean, yeah, it's very rare. Normally, it's like it's a situation where it's like a line producer or someone that's trying to set budgets for like the broadcast, and talent is just lumped in as part of their responsibilities. So they can't assess really what the talent do or what they're worth. Their job is to fucking, to line produce a broadcast for like lighting and fucking and all that other stuff. Like we had a talent manager that came in between, but and he understood us. I guess, but I would never have asked him for a review. You know what I mean? And that's, I've been offered VOD reviews by like people in these management positions who I know have no experience, and it's fucking insulting that they think it's just it's so Mickey Mouse. It's so easy to pick up a microphone and become an esports commentator. That is literally why that's why these rates get so fucked on, because there's so many people, especially with COVID forcing people away from their jobs and the fucking SM7B getting sold out because everyone's trying to do a podcast. It's that market, that saturation. It's the ridiculous amount of bodies throwing themselves at Riot to cast Valorant, combined with people who have no idea how to assess talent. It's a fucking nightmare.
And if you guys want the real problems, and Uber can attest to this, we actually, one of the good things that Blizzard did for us in the first couple years of being on Overwatch League was that they hired talent feedback, like basically talent coaches, and they were good ones too. One of our talent coaches had been a talent coach at ESPN for like 20 years. One of our talent coaches, and also a production consultant to help out on the production side, is like a Super Bowl fucking producer, right? So they hired some really legit people. And I was in like casting review sessions with these people where they would be like, you and Doe are excellent. You guys are really nailing it. However, why don't you have these things? And we'd be like, well, production doesn't give that to us. And it really, what these meetings turned into was them getting information about us, about how crap a lot of the production was. And then they were like, what the hell? That's not normal. And they would go back and ream production. So like, basically the feedback we were getting was like, you guys are doing a great job. I can't believe you don't have these stats, right? What kind of sports broadcast doesn't have these stats? And I'm like, I know, please give me some more stats, or like help me out with some level of prep. They were amazed compared to the commentators they typically work with that are spoon-fed a lot of information by production, that we were doing it all ourselves. And then on top of that, our performance on the broadcast was very good, right? I'm sure you had the same experience, right, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It turned into them being mortified we didn't have anything, and then they spent most of the time batting for us, and then they didn't come back. They disappeared. I wonder fucking why. You know what I mean?
They just disappeared.
Like, they want to empower talent as long as it doesn't put them in a position where they actually have to change anything. We're the ones that have to change.
Yeah. So the whole thing was pretty wild. So I mean, we're gonna take some viewer questions. You guys have closing thoughts?
I'll just add as well, though, like, it seems to me that certainly in Valorant, this is kind of going to be the norm. I wish the talent would sort of think, not all of you can be the coach of 100 Thieves. Not all of you can be the general manager. Like this is your shot, and you're gonna have to decide what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to put up with in order to have it.
Because there isn't millions of dollars at the end of the rainbow, guys.
Yeah, no,
it's not there, and it's never going to be there.
Very much like relationships, you know, where after a bad breakup, you might want to retroactively. The thing you think about is, I wish I'd sort of kept my dignity, or you know, whatever. Or I wish I'd got out sooner, or you know what I mean. So I understand that there is an aspect to this where it's like you're gonna have to play ball to a certain degree, but if you're giving up swathes of money, if you're giving up the opportunity to work with someone you care about and you have a good rapport with, if you're essentially betraying your colleagues to have it, you're not going to be able to live with that 2-3 years down the road. You'll feel bad about it. That's just the nature of the beast. So I would say, like, you've got to get your shit together and get your shit together soon, because Riot Games, by the way, here's what they'll do. They've got employees they'll put on a broadcast, even though they're not as good as the freelance talent. They're doing that already. They'll just hire someone in the League of Legends orbit, as they've announced today, and maybe take your mind off things. They'll use every trick in the book to keep you in this uncertain state. So the best of you, the ones that I believe are necessary for Valorant to be a success, you need to come together, have a talk, decide what you're willing to do, be transparent with each other, and then go forward as a unified front. Otherwise, you're going to let Riot divide and conquer you, and they thrive on that shit. There's almost no
really
one better
good
in
at
the
it, guys.
industry. Yeah, exactly.
And they'll lie to your face and gaslight you about it. They will never tell you the truth. So
all I have to say is, I would just say, I can't remember the exact quote, but the gist of it went along the lines of, like, the problem with reasonable people is they just adjust and adapt to whatever their circumstances are. So only unreasonable people ever change things.
Yeah.
Think about it.
And they're the ones that get forced out. You know, I don't want people having this impression that Sean and Dan were like these little fucking timid puppies that, you know, like just like bent under the fucking yoke. These are the guys that had events like Berlin when they were doing 14-hour days with dog shit catering and fucking hotels with people smoking and fucking partying in the hallways all night. These are the kind of people that stood up and said, this is not acceptable. And it's like, I don't want people to think these guys are just fighting for getting paid a ton of money. They were also fighting for other members of their talent. They were fighting to set standards in contracts that were fair and more symmetrical than what we have right now. And I don't doubt that was a big part about why they were nudged out. So just be clear about that. That's the risk you take. Same thing. Yep. I've heard it from other people. Like Frost mentioned that happened to her. I know it happened in the Overwatch League as well. It fucking happened to Monty and Doa. It happened to Monty especially, because he was one of the people that internally was actually taking a stand for stuff, and he was too troublesome, he was too problematic, and they had to fucking get rid of him. Yeah. This is what happens.
Sometimes you will plow a very fucking lonely field, but yeah, you also have to realize it's not just about this esport. This is an ecosystem. It's not just about one game. It's not just about one job. You know, you might be able to parlay that iconoclastic stance that you have into going and being a manager somewhere else. In which point, you know, if you still want to do it, you put yourself on screen. There might be a games developer that's not some fucking micro-dosing Silicon Valley lunatic with a god complex that actually takes feedback from knowledgeable people. Highly unlikely, but it could happen. And then they might want to make you integral to what they move forward in their esports product. It might not be a passion in the same way that some of the other games are, but there will be opportunities. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. And, you know, a lot of people are very afraid of that eventuality. And they generally, in my opinion, they tend to be the ones that fizzle out and aren't really remembered in any sort of meaningful capacity. So something else to consider.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I did have one last point, because it's on those lines, actually. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no worries,
it's along the lines of what Rich is talking about, actually. Here's the other problem. This isn't a great sales pitch to ask people to do the right thing, because I'm sort of going to tell you, you won't benefit. But one of the reasons I personally find it satisfying to do the right thing in cases like this, expose things, speak out against things, demand more fair treatment, is I've noticed, because the people who hire are so petty, here's how it goes. They don't take your point on board, right? Because you said it and you're being troublesome and they don't like you and nobody else has said it. But once you've done all this publicly and you've taken a stand, often there's the whole big brother syndrome where when they go to deal with the next person, though, don't worry, they'll hold it against you that you brought this up and they'll never forgive you and there'll be reprisals. But actually, when they go to deal with the next guy that's basically the next you in that position, they actually do tend to be a little bit more chill. They tend to take like at least some of the lessons and try and avoid avoid just having an endless chain of their best people come out against them. So the good news is, it's like if you're actually someone who cares about the space more than just your own fucking how much you're making, you can have an impact on the community. Like in League of Legends, Monty getting exiled absolutely did help the people who were right up to the line but hadn't gone over the line. Though unfortunately, I know it's not a great pitch, like I say, because you're going to think, well, how does that help me? It doesn't, unfortunately. But you know what? You might actually help the next set of people, and it might actually gradually sort of turn the steamboat really slowly, and we might make some progress, because there was some progress made in League of Legends and these other games.
When I made my YouTube video about how Riot was paying casters bad rates and keeping them from monetizing their content, it instantly doubled some people's salaries, and it basically, based on their next negotiation, and it also allowed them to start monetizing their own content and creating their own stuff. Now, I did that because I was mad and thought the industry would be better, but I also had an Overwatch League contract at the time for more money anyway, so the risk to me was relatively low, I would say. But it certainly set a precedent of people potentially not wanting to work with me. Like, it did do objective harm to my career to do that. But I wouldn't trade it, because that I'm not just in it for the money and to have the easiest fucking life in the universe, guys. I'd actually like to make a difference and follow my own ethics from time to time, right? All right, let's take some viewer questions inside on Esports Discord. Grogcoin channel. There's a pinned post there about how to ask questions. Uber also has a rally coin, so you can check that out while you're over there.
I do. Yeah. I'll cast you gameplay. That's one thing you can do with it. So
that's great.
Nice.
So let's I think some of these we can knock out pretty quickly. How far away are we from TSM entering the conversation for GOAT shit esports org? What steps remain in their path to greatness, and who would be their toughest competition? They're not even close, guys. They're not even close.
The problem is they don't like actually steal so fucking sexually.
They're not owned by the people. Mafia.
Exactly. Yeah, they haven't done like real world. Aside from potentially, who knows, maybe some financial fuckery. They haven't done real world crimes. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, there's way worse. And probably, I don't even think we're going to name the worst ones, because we've previously said that we don't want to put ourselves personally in danger for outing.
The worst one's probably some org in China that none of us know about that just wrecked the fucking employer. It wouldn't be one that'd be famous, unfortunately.
Like I said, I mean, I've been told stuff as it pertains to match fixing, where a Chinese esports organization has literally had a member of a triad group come to a gamer house and pull a gun on players to show them how serious they are. So, yes.
That's how far esports has come, because back in the day, if people don't know, there was like a Doom clone called Triad, which was a shareware game, and it was like an FPS match. We've come so far in esports, real triads are now interested and involved. So the evolution of the game, you see.
Really.
Yeah. So I mean, people, when people talk about like fuckery, I mean, like, common or garden greed or common or garden incompetence is actually,
it pales compared to that. Come on.
Yeah, well, it's par for the course. What you have to realize is there's a number of regions where esports is intricately linked with organized crime now, and the things that go on in those regions do result in people being threatened with very real physical harm for non-compliance. So, yeah. Bit of a bummer answer, but
on the joke side, fuck TSM.
Yeah.
This shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Brought myself out of the darkness for a moment there.
When is Richard finally going to be able to walk away from esports reporting and not fucking dragged back in by the shitstorm that is esports? He secretly loves being dragged.
He did say on the last episode he's going for that third journalist of the year, so it can't be this year, boys.
I'm gonna ruin Mitch's life again by having him attached to my next speech.
Mate, I have never seen someone so incandescent as when Richard stepped up and fucking belted that speech out, mate. Like literally, and I was sat there like, I'm basking in secondhand glory. Yeah, bro, I was like, I'll be a fucking mic stand for this guy right now.
Don't react.
Yeah, I think because I wasn't expecting to win, and they sort of told me like literally about 10 minutes before I got the award, you've won the award. So I didn't have a speech prepared, because I was like, I've already got mine, whatever. And so I had to scribble something down pretty quickly. So it did just come from a place of, I can always tap into the rage, force it. But I think I even said to you when I got up, I said, I'm sorry about this, mate.
It's funny because I turned and hugged Richard, because the problem is that I didn't want to face forward because I had this massive fucking erection after that, and I didn't want to just flash that from the crowd.
So yeah, but so look, why do I keep doing it? I mean, look, as we've seen again with this sort of TSM story, there's another twit longer gone out today, which of course, denies some of the claims that were made by the organization as he was fired. Some people are putting those claims on me. I think the article's quite clear that all I'm reporting on are the reasons for the firing. But it'll be another couple of days of somebody's refuted your reporting, so you're a liar, you're a scumbag, you got it wrong, even though they don't really understand the difference between allegations somebody else is making and allegations I'm reporting on being made. But whatever.
And you already talked to the guy too and heard his side of the story,
yes,
and then reported on
and
it.
interviewed the guy and gave him his chance. But in that article he refutes the allegations people are saying I now got wrong. It unfortunately what you have to realize is and what was very one of the reasons why I don't pop off on Twitter anymore, or I don't argue about my work on like Reddit burners anymore, and I don't feel compelled to kind of like hold it up, is that basically when I when I started meeting Declan Hill, who's an award-winning journalist in his own right, he reached out to me and said that he thinks the work I've done is exceptional. This is like a published journalist, a professor, an award-winning, guy. And so it was just at that point where I was like, you know what? I always had a suspicion in the back of my mind that what I was doing was like a bit too high level for esports, in the sense that it's just a young audience that don't really understand the mechanics of journalism. Like, I spent years trying to normalize roster leagues, for fuck's sake, in something that's meant to be a sport, and I had to take all of the licks for that. No team would ever break up. They're all friends, Richard. What do you mean? Like, fuck me, and so I went through years of just sort of getting pummeled by the community. It did make me a bit bitter and jaded. But the point is, like, we still haven't got an abundance of people that will tell the difficult stories. There's like Jacob Wolf, it's like Kevin Hitt, sorry if I'm leaving anybody out.
George, he might be on the fringes of that.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so.
Adam Fitch, chuck him in the mix.
Yeah, Adam Fitch, although he's quit. He's like a hit marker now, not doing that kind of
reporting. He's already out. Okay, so
yeah, that's what I mean, right? So nobody sticks around and does it for a while, but it's like, listen, this is still an industry where people are getting fucking exploited, and it's never sat right with me. Like the thing that really upsets me the most about this industry is that there are young adults that come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they just immediately run into the wrong people. And I want to keep the wrong people out, and I've been terribly unsuccessful at doing that. You can only fight the battles that you're able to.
And even the veterans. I mean, this whole Sean and DDK things is a great example. These guys are decade-long esports veterans that were warned by other decade-long esports veterans about exactly what would happen. And then it happened.
And they did everything right too.
Yeah, they did everything right.
Basically everything right from like an objective standpoint as a caster, and they still got fucked. That's the most harrowing part of this whole thing.
Yeah. And so it's like, listen, I want people to sort of have an awareness that if you come into a space and you take people's money, or you're a fucking groomer, or a sexual fucking predator, or you're a bully, or you're a fucking tyrant, or whatever, or you're a games developer that fucking destroy the lives of talent because of petty fucking grievances, there is someone at least that's gonna call you out for that. It's not, the culture of fear that's reigned supreme in esports and still does. That's what I've been trying to chip away at. It doesn't really, and there's integrity stuff that I do with the match fixing. That's the course I teach these days at a university. That's always an area of expertise. I feel that battle's lost. Honestly, I don't think we're gonna be able to clean up esports anytime
People don't
soon.
get it.
Well,
and it's heavily compromised.
The thing is, the noose is tightening as well, because in League of Legends, I had safety because I had my OGN job and I didn't work directly for Riot, right? With the ESL and Faceit merger, all of a sudden now there's really only Blast as a meaningful competitor within CS:GO. Now that Riot and Activision Blizzard are putting out more titles that they have complete monopolies on, Blizzard used to outsource a lot of their circuit to independent tournament organizers and is now operating Overwatch League and CDL entirely internally. That's brand new in the last few years. So the number of people who can freely express what is going on and express potentially contradictory opinions is growing. The list grows shorter every fucking year, guys.
By the way, please support them if you actually like their work. Because again, there's nothing like after all, you go through all the shit of the company fucking with you, lying about you, putting things in the industry, trying to literally do all things, block your access, feed you false information. You go through all that, you expose them, and then you have a bunch of the fan base that goes like, "Why are you burning bridges? Wow, couldn't you just DM him for that?"
Well, they must have done something wrong if billion-dollar company doesn't like them. They must be in the wrong.
Exactly.
Yes. The multi-billion-dollar company entirely owned by what is effectively the Chinese government is definitely the good guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know when I'm, you know, I definitely have to quit soon. I mean, the reality is I just won't be around, you know, for.
You'll just gradually phase out, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, everyone sort of in this industry, like, unless you're smart and you know when to get out, you sort of just fade into irrelevancy anyway. I've done a good job of sort of extending my sell-by date, you know, beyond. But I always know when I'm starting to linger and outstay my welcome. So look, I'll write an esports book. I'll write something, and then I'll probably go and do something else, you know, or just keel over and die, like whatever. Who gives a fuck? You know, it's just like, you know, I'm here. I'm gonna do it for at least this year, just because I want to definitely leave something, a legacy that even though no one will talk about it, I'll know, you know, greatest of all time, and that'll do for me. Like, not many people get to the top of any hill in their lives, so it doesn't matter that this hill's really small and made of shit. I climbed it, I scaled it, I'm at the top, I planted my flag, whatever.
That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that Richard does really one day finally put the mantle down and then look like in that fucking shit sequel to whatever it was, the fucking Infinity War, where Thanos was like, like I can rest now, and then like that'll just be the moment he just dies instantly. Like, you know, once the flickering flame that kept him going all those years, once that is quenched, he won't even die. He'll just be like fucking Luke Skywalker. He'll just like fade out.
No, I honestly do think as well. I mean, like, you know, the last 2 years have been like really tough, and you know, on a personal level, and you know, I have become the jaded. I used to adopt a jaded persona. Now, like, I am genuinely jaded. Like, you can only handle like hundreds and thousands of people like just attacking you relentlessly, sort of every day.
Oh, mate, have you seen the responses when you brought that series out? You know, when you did the Prime numbers, which is basically when we first made By the Numbers, like 7 years ago or something. It wasn't, if people don't know, an actual show like it is now. It initially started as we were just doing fantasy esports, right?
Yeah.
If you go back and watch, because Richard's put like the best moments together in some highlight videos, because these are from like 2015. All the comments are like, holy shit, they're way more upbeat and chipper, and they sort of seem to love the industry. Still like, oh, it's actually brutal. And when you watch it, you are just like, fuck, who is that? Like, I don't even speak the way I speak now. I have like a way higher like register in my voice. I'm sort of more soft spoken. It's fucking weird watching it. That's what esports does to a motherfucker. It turns you into me.
Yeah, I actually stopped the series because of it, because it's just depressing, honestly. And it's like, you know, look, if people don't understand, like, for example, for like stories I've written, I've had like Russian mobsters like fucking inquire to people like, where does he live? Do you happen to know an address? I would love to send him some vodka. Yeah, for real. Wants to send me some motherfucking polonium. Or, you know, like I say, you know, how E-League, like, which should have been the peak of my accomplishments as a broadcast talent, was utterly destroyed by lunatics in the FGC. People threatening to shoot me, people threatening to blow places up. I had to have bodyguards. I couldn't go out and meet fans anymore. It was just a really lonely, awful time. I didn't even get to enjoy my peak because of the, you know, just constant harassment that I received. And of course, no one's inviting me to speak at the UN. No one's writing an article about, should we save Richard, you know, should we give Richard Lewis a break? No. People have utterly destroyed my life. I mean, like, you know, we can joke and call it hell in a cell all we want. Like, that is one of the most lied about incidents in esports history. It is a complete fabrication from the ground up. DreamHack know that. You know, I've got chat logs of them saying, yeah, we had to say what we had to say, you know, and it's like, well, when are you ever going to come out and correct it? It's too late now. You know, they basically went all out to essentially ruin my life. So, and for what? You know, for an act of self-defense, because their security fucked up and they didn't want to get told for failure to have proper security, you can't come back to this venue, you use year upon year. So, you know, look, esports is essentially like, it's been my entire life, but it's also ruined my life. You know, I can't really think of any other way to say it. It's like, it is like basically being a heroin addict, but without the fun.
It's like Moby Dick, as how I see your career, Richard. It's all just about trying to capture the whale at the end, but in doing so, it will kill you if you keep going, mate.
Yeah, we're there.
All right. What was the dumbest scandal in esports history?
I mean, all of mine. Should we just start at the top? Fucking anything that involved me in Twitter, probably. I mean, near the top of the list. Because my half scandals aren't even about anything real. It's essentially just like, right, here's the reason why everyone in the world's going to say fucking hate you this week. I'm like, all right, I guess. Go on then. How long's this going to take? 2 days? There's some pretty bad ones if you talk about scandal. Like, put it this way. All right, you know what? Just for the sake of the old fans who don't know the deep lore of the game, I'll give you a mad one, because to this day, it's sort of been low-key forgotten, because crucially, the evidence never actually was online, which is way back in the day. If you don't know, Loco Doco, who obviously now is just in like NFTs and stuff, but he was like a coach of TSM and he was doing content stuff. When he was a pro player, he famously had a streaming incident where he just forgot the stream was on and started jerking off. Now, luckily, there was only like one fucking screenshot. And it was like just something like you can't see anything, and he got away with it. So luckily, no one saved the video, because if that video existed, like that again, that's just such a dumb scandal to have, isn't it? It's like, just turn the fucking camera off. You know, like,
when I leave esports, I'm going to turn it on my stream purposefully and jerk off. So there you go.
There you go.
That's going to be how I'm leaving the scene. It's a spoiler. Watch out.
Now that's a hell of a parting shot.
I don't know. The Cosby Suite one fucking got to me.
Oh, that was pretty up there. Because you know the baddest part about that is, if you actually look into it, they are right. Technically, he hadn't actually had those charges against him.
Yeah.
But what's genius about that scandal, Uber, is in the context that it came out like last year, like they couldn't have had the context of calling it the Cosby Suite age any worse, possibly, than it did. Because it makes it look like, if you don't know and you're looking backwards, you're like, holy shit, they named the suite after a rapist, like a serial rapist. But they did it in theory, right? So I agree. That one's one where it's almost just unfortunately just aged like the finest wine. Yeah, it's got really bad. That's got really bad.
I mean, obviously, we have to talk about the Lena double lift leaking an untraceable, unprovable conflict of interest. That was really dumb. That was really dumb.
Oh, and then remember, here's my favorite
part of the sponsor.
Every time Lena fucked up, because she did this a bunch of times, instead of realizing I'm quite bad at decision making and long term planning, I probably better leave this now. I fucked it up. She would always rush to Reddit, and in doing so, indict herself even more. She would give away, for example, she would rush to Reddit and go, actually, that's not even a problem though, because I often talk about other cases of other players in front of double lift. It's like, holy shit, someone take the keyboard. I'm in theory, I'm trying to catch her, and I'm like, why is nobody taking the keyboard?
It was the Lenovo
this is
getting fault.
Oh, it's nuts. Yeah, she actually did it. People don't know. She went on Reddit and said that it was the fault of their fucking sponsor provided PC. She named the sponsor by name. It was the fault of the PC that it picked up them. You couldn't reverse engineer a better way to destroy TSM than what these people were doing.
There was a funny one with Red Eye's been involved in a few classics. Right, yeah, I know. I'm like,
it's for real, Richard.
I've had Jackie tell me the stories, mate, and I'm
here's the thing. I hope that Richard is just going to mention a public one, because he has got my favourite 4-part of all time.
I'm never doing that to Paul. Like, what?
Fair enough. Okay.
You know, he's been through enough, guys. He's been through enough.
Yeah. Like he's had it tough. But he does have the best one of all time. Yes,
he's had a really bad one.
But anyway, here's an example of one. He got in trouble at Blizzard, I think, and had to apologize, and nearly got pulled from BlizzCon or some event. He might actually have been pulled from the event, and it was over him. He said something like, you throw like a girl to someone.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, you remember that? And because he said that, he got absolutely chewed up by Blizzard executives for being like some sort of mass sexist, when of course it's just some sort of fucking throwaway Clarkson boomer comment. He doesn't mean anything by it, you know. But he nearly had a severe dent in his career off the back of that. That's pretty dumb.
All right,
this is what I mean. Well, we live in a time with American optics culture. It wouldn't be an episode if I didn't talk about it. Americans have just fucked up the planet, mate. Fuck them.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you guys.
I don't like it either. We'll do one more. Personally, I'm interested in how experts in their respective fields work and how they've cultivated habits and environments to ensure they maximize their output when working. What are some successful and unsuccessful strategies you've tried in the past to perform at your best, whether it was reporting, such as journalism, casting, analyzing on broadcast, or people management? So any systems you guys have set up in order to optimize your ability to be top of your career?
I mean, I'll keep it short, but I carried a lot of the techniques I used at university. And I have this problem where I have to write things down to retain it. So I fill notebooks that I never end up opening, and that's how I do prep. It's fucking weird, but once I've written it, I can recall it easily.
There is scientific evidence that handwriting things actually increases retention compared to like typing it. There's pretty substantial studies, and like I do the same thing in my analysis. Like I know a lot of other analysts will type up their notes, even if I have stats that I am looking at from a printed piece of paper that have been given to me, or I'm looking at them on a a website or in a database. I will handwrite the stats that I want to increase retention, and I will write match results, everything like that. So I have tons and tons and tons of notebooks of handwritten stuff that I carry around with me. I mean, I can I've got a couple on my desk.
Mate,
right now.
you did a couple broadcasts with the fucking book in your hands, mate.
Yeah, no,
we're in the green room. Yeah, like Monty's like got the book. I'm like, oh fuck, he's got the Bible out.
Notes, casting notes, like So
yeah,
I would say one thing I've tried to do in my career genuinely is I actually learned, like, essentially, because I've tried to, of all the people I know, I'm one of the only people who've, I think, tried to see what the upper limit is on how much work you can actually do in a day with consistency and not just destroy yourself completely, because Spotty will. If you try like some streak, you will just burn out completely after like 60 days or something. And basically what I learned was, like, I can this might sound woo-woo, but essentially I can feel at any point in the day how much, it's almost like it's not like, I think of like a video game HUD. It's like I can sense how much energy I have that I could commit to
your meter
work.
is draining.
I can tell at that point in the day though how much I've got left, and I've learned through doing a million reps of it how much a talk show takes versus an interview versus an article. And so essentially the key thing I had to learn was this: it's just like the order you do things in a day. Like if I do a big show like this, that's the end of my day. Like I can't do 3 hours talking, listening, trying to listen to what everyone's saying. Yeah, I should do. That's the joke. And then so what I'll do is if I had to do some writing or like a really serious video, I would have done that first thing this morning, and I would have booked this at the end of my day, because I just know on the energy levels, like if I do some solo work, I want that to be my absolute best stuff. I don't want that to be throwaway. Talk show, you can get away with sometimes not being on your A game or not remember everything. You've got other people on the show, and you're going to have to pour your energy and listen to them to make your points as well. So I would just say it's more being careful in that regard, because one thing that is actually very underrated, it's just something unfortunately if you've never done on-camera work you won't understand, is something about the light being on and you and your mind knowing that it is recording you. Actually, I'm not exaggerating, physically affects you. Like it raises your body temperature, you feel way thirsty, all these things. Basically it drains you in a way that like having a similar fun convo on a Discord playing a game doesn't in any way. That is actually, if anything,
is way different.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it's like it's a lot more draining than people would realize to do this stuff. So I just sort of learned how to maximize that element,
Yeah, and a few for the journalism thing. Like the first thing is I notice a lot of like esports reporters I talk to, they're not really in a habit of. So first of all, they shelve stories if they can't get it over the line. They'll investigate a story. They'll start typing it up. Then maybe a source will contradict themselves, or maybe they can only get one source or whatever it is. And then they just sort of shelve it and just leave it and never think about it again. What you want to be doing there is you want to be keeping a record of it, keep all your notes, make sure you've got it saved away somewhere. Because you might not break it that week, that month, that year. It might be something that comes in handy down the line. So I've got like probably by now thousands of stories on hard drives that never got finished. But
the general rule: never throw away any notes or research ever.
Yeah,
exactly. You can always use it again one day. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, totally. And and the other thing as well, just from a journalistic perspective, when it comes to sourcing, right? If the difference between having sources and a source network is you have to constantly check in with those sources. Like one of the reasons why I'm notoriously terrible online at keeping in touch with my friends, and I might only talk to people I actually like and care about like once every 3 months or whatever, just have a get together, a catch up, is because the rest of the time I'm checking in with a source from like 4 years ago, or 2 years ago, and just asking how they're doing, how's their life going, remember that story we're working on? Because again, you never know when a source is going to be useful for something else you're investigating. You never know when you're going to want to check in with those people. So it is sort of like social plate spinning. You go around, you have to keep checking in with those people. You don't choose them once and then discard them. you know, in that sense, it's almost like being a car salesman. You know, you don't sell one person one car one time. You sell them, you know, 2-3 cars over a 10-year period or whatever. And so, you know, and also it's just good manners. It's just good practice to sort of not be so cynical and disposable like a lot of, I think, modern journalists are, where they come from that BuzzFeed culture where it's like, you know, what have you done for me lately? So those are two just little good bits of advice. Oh, and of course, the other thing, always, 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 before you publish anything, before you even start digging anything, before you ask for comment, if your story in any way, shape, or form pertains to social media or content, have the content downloaded, have the tweet archived, have it screenshotted, have multiple ways of accessing it so it cannot be memory holed. I have seen so many people down the years tell me they've got amazing stories and amazing things people supposedly did, and they've got it on fucking video. If you just look at this link and then it's gone, or their account gets nuked from orbit by someone. You know, so don't even start flapping your gums until you've got everything you need to be able to prove it's true. Or you're going to be like that fucking hick who claims he's been abducted by a UFO, and everyone's going to be like, well, yeah, your arsehole might just be swollen for other reasons, mate. So, you know, there you go. 3 bits of advice.
I think, at least for me too, it's important to know when you work best in the day. Like, for example, I just know that I'm kind of like the most focused in the morning and early afternoon, and I get, you know, by late at night I'm pretty actually fucking useless, unlike a lot of gamers, and like that's where I do my worst work. And so blocking out times to be alone. I also, you know, I don't listen to music when I'm working or when I'm doing research on teams or prepping for casts. I don't, you know, I've said this many times, I don't really play the games that I'm casting at any point in time, because having mechanics doesn't do anything for me. And if I'm going to use an hour of my time to play the game at a shitty level, then it's much better use of my time to spend that hour rewatching film, or talking to a pro player, or doing any of the other making content, which forces me to articulate my thoughts and like nail them down in a way that then I can bring into the broadcast. So I think generally for games that, you know, require mechanics, so this would be like not Hearthstone, right, which is a pure decision making game, which I think you probably should be able to play at a very high level if you are a color commentator, because basically what you're doing on the broadcast is identical to the process that the pro player themselves is going through, right? Yeah. But if it's a mechanical game, there's no point in practicing mechanics ever, in my opinion. And it's actually, I think that it's mostly just a waste of time for people who don't want to grind film, and because they can trick themselves into thinking, oh, I'm prepping for my job. But, you know, playing plat solo queue is not doing anything remotely like what a pro player does or experiences within a professional game, for basically any game, right? So that was, I think when I realized that grinding VODs was just hands down the best thing I could do, that made a really big difference in terms of my ability to cast and know what was going on at a global level, because I wasn't just watching Korea, I was watching or casting every game in Korea. I was watching all these other games from all these other regions, so I had a much better finger on the pulse of, you know, the greater professional scene.
I'll just say a little anecdote, because I do also feel like this. I don't want to give away too much, Monty. This was hard-earned fucking techniques, ability to do things, how to do it. I had to invent some of the shit I did. So I'll say that there's a famous anecdote, it's probably apocryphal, obviously, where supposedly some, like, dad went up with his kid to Mozart, and the kid said to Mozart something like, how do I become a great composer? And, you know, like, the kid was like 13 years old or something, and he said something like, you know, it'll take you many years. I don't know if you'll be able to do it. You have to try really hard. And then the kid goes, but I heard you wrote a symphony when you were 6. And he said, yeah, but I didn't ask anyone how to do it.
Yep.
There we go. That's my thoughts.
I think it's true.
Not me, mate. I was just some boomer in 2001. In fact, I always tell the jokes. It's true. When I came into esports and had my first paying job, all the people I first met as my peers in the industry told me, esports was pretty cool. Shame you missed it. And they were all leaving the industry because they just had the .com bubble burst. So the joke is, like, no one gave me any fucking, there was no advice. I just had to figure it out while I was going and make a lot of mistakes along the way, believe it or not.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for your Grog Coin questions. We've had, hopefully, we always say this, why do we have 2 of these in 1 week? What the fuck is going on?
You know why. We're reaching the point of singularity where esports will implode.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see you on a future episode. You could call that episode the upcoming episode.
Oh, yeah, boy.
There you go. Spoiler, Esports Delenda asked bye.
Cut the recording.